Chapter 643. She rubbed her hair irritably and closed the box but inadvertently saw that beside the box, there was a jade token lying quietly. Jin Yu Private Bank's token. She had obviously returned it to Xie Jingxing but did not know when Xie Jingxing threw it here. It seemed that he did it on purpose. Shen Miao had never seen anyone give such a large amount of money to others, so Shen Miao felt pity for the great Liang's Emperor Yonglu. After keeping the jade token, Shen Miao shook her head and thought that if she were to meet Xie Jingxing in the future, she would have to return this thing to him. In the residence of Prince Qin, deep into the night, there was a female sitting in front of the mirror to dress up. The female sitting in front of the mirror was also at the age of youth and was considered to be dainty and beautiful. Especially with the faint scholarly smell that was emitted from her body, she was considered to be a special beauty. At this moment she was wearing a snow-white inner garment and looking at the mirror. She was clearly a beautiful flower but her expression was somewhat gloomy. This person was not anyone else but Shen Yu, who had been missing for many days in the Shen residence. Shen Yu had never thought that one day she would have a relationship with the crown prince of the Qin country. Originally she planned to leave home and head to the residence of Prince Ding. She thought that Fu Xiuyi had a gentle gentleman's temperament and she was also the daughter of the third household of the Shen family. Fu Xiuyi would not sit idly by and ignore her even if they were colleagues. Moreover, she was born beautiful and had a friendly temperament with unlimited talent in poetry and painting. Even a stone person would not be moved. At that time she only needed to tell of her grievances in front of Prince Ding and obtain Prince Ding's love. She would be able to win over Prince Ding's heart. But she had never left the residence alone before, so how would she know where the residence of Prince Ding was? After asking for the location of others, she was afraid that the servants of the Shen family would chase after her and had no choice but to hide. There were often such females in the Ding capital who either escaped from marriage or committed a crime and escaped from home. A female who was alone was the easiest to be targeted. Shen Yu was also targeted by others. The people who targeted her were a group of local ruffians, and before she could find the residence of Prince Ding, something happened in a remote alley. Those ruffians snatched her bag and even wanted to insult her innocence. In a moment of desperation, Shen Yu could only shout out that she was the niece of the formidable great general. Although she was not reconciled, Shen Yu's heart was clear. His father's name was not as resounding as Shen Wan's name, especially now that Shen Xen had returned to the Ding capital and obtained the heavy responsibility of Emperor Wenhui. Compared to the past, it was better to call out Shen Xian's name as a deterrent. In the end, someone happened to pass by, heard her shout, and saved the examiner. It was only later that Shen Yu found out that this person was from the residence of Prince Qin. Then Shen Yu saw Huang Fu Hao. Shen Yu only saw Huang Fu Hao once at the tribute banquet, and as the other party had a noble status, she did not dare to do anything out of line. This time she thought that it was Huang Fu Hao who helped her conveniently, so Shen Yu thanked him properly. Who knew that Huang Fu Hao seemed to be very interested in her. To be exact, he was very interested in Shen Miao and actually asked a lot of things about Shen Yu. Shen Yu felt that Huang Fu Hao most likely took a fancy to Shen Miao and her heart was even more jealous. No matter what, Huang Fu Hao was the crown prince of Qin Kingdom, and one day he would become the emperor of Qin Kingdom. If Shen Miao and Huang Fu Hao were to be together, Shen Miao would be the crown prince's consort and in the future she would be the empress of Qin country. Shen Miao would be a Sufei and could also be a Geifei. No matter what, there would be endless glory and wealth. Thus, Shen Yu said a lot of Shen Miao's faults. She slowly and faintly revealed that Shen Miao was a scheming and untalented female. Sure enough, after Shen Yu finished speaking, she saw that Huang Fu Hao's expression was not good. This made Shen Yu's heart very pleased. Huang Fu Hao planned to send Shen Yu back, but Shen Yu heard that Shen Wan wanted to divorce Chen Roqiu and the fact that Chen Roqiu returned to her maiden family in a fit of anger. The moment Shen Yu heard it, she was unable to restrain her anger and planned to return to the residence to seek justice for her mother. But just as she was about to leave, she thought that if she were to return now, Shen Wan would definitely marry Wang Bai as a Pinchi. Now in the Shen residence, Shen Wan and old Shen Furen were still angry because of the matter of her and Shen Dongling exchanging marriage, so there would not be any good fruit to eat when she returned. Shen Yu could not think of any good ideas and was also not willing to see Chen Roqiu suffer. One had to know that once Chen Roqiu was divorced, even her identity as a D daughter would be implicated, and in the future she would not have a foothold in the Shen residence. Shen Yu already had a lot of resentment towards Shen Wan and old Shen Furen, and this time she was even more unreconciled. Until the end, she thought of an idea. Huang Fu Hao was the crown prince of Qin country and his power was monstrous. If Huang Fu Hao were to take action, perhaps everything would be much simpler. As for her, she only needed to please Huang Fu Hao. She must stay in the residence of Prince Qin to prevent the Shen family from finding and manipulating her. Chapter 644. After a few days of light snow in the Ding capital, the skies finally cleared up. Shen Miao was in the courtyard drying the books, and they were all military books that Shen Qiu brought over. These few days in the room, one feared that mold would grow and she had to dry them clean. Jingzhe and Gu Yu were drying the bedding in the courtyard when Jingzhe said, "One heard that the lawsuit between the Chen and Shen family is very lively and many people are watching. Now that it has been dragged for so long, one do not know what the final result would be." "What other result can there be? Both sides are doing a thankless job." Gu Yu disdainfully said, "To bring the family matters to court, it is really a joke. Fortunately Master and Furen separated early, otherwise, they might be implicated together." Chen Roqiu's maiden family and the Shen family started a lawsuit. Old Master Chen was a stubborn old man who cared about his face and didn't want to admit defeat. He had to fight for everything and wouldn't allow himself to be the one in the wrong. Although Chen Roqiu was already married, old Master Chen still had to protect Chen Roqiu's reputation. This was naturally not because he loved Chen Roqiu but because he did not allow the Shen family to look down on the Chen family. Chen Roqiu's mother was a powerful one. Her heart ached for Chen Roqiu, and with a few words, she managed to persuade Master Chen to fight a lawsuit with the Shen family regarding the divorce. The Chen family said that when Chen Roqiu married into the Shen residence, she was conscientious and managed the family business for Shen Wan. She also wanted to bring in concubines for Shen Wan, but it was Shen Wan who refused. Chen Roqiu had married into the Shen residence for many years, and everyone outside knew that she was educated and reasonable, gentle and graceful. Now, for the sake of a woman of unknown origin who had come to seek shelter, he had to divorce his wife. This was truly a case of spoiling the concubine to the detriment of the wife. As for the Shen family, they said that even though Chen Roqiu was the mistress, she was unable to give birth to a son and did not want to help her husband to take in a few more concubines. Now that her husband was taking in more people, she even obstructed him, showing that she was very jealous. One said the mother-in-law was unkind, and the other said the daughter-in-law was unfilial. What a big farce! The passers-by in the Ding capital were watching with relish. In the end, the petition was submitted to the Yamen. The Yamen rarely handled such cases. Moreover, this lawsuit wasn't a big deal. The Chen family's master was a prefectural official and Shen Wan's official position wasn't a small official. He couldn't afford to offend either side, so he could only drag it out. Shen Wan and Chen Roqiu's fate as husband and wife had come to an end in this lawsuit. Firstly, it was because Shen Wan was after all an official of the court, yet he was involved in a lawsuit because of a family matter. Those imperial censors who were always idling around all day finally found someone who could be of help and naturally would not let him go. Shen Wan's career would be obstructed because of this. Secondly, it was because Chang Ziqing was pregnant. It could be said that Chang Ziqing's body came at the right time. To be pregnant at this juncture, it almost pushed Chen Roqiu out. Even though Shen Wan had doted on Chen Roqiu for so many years, it did not mean that he did not look forward to his son. If Chang Ziqing was pregnant with a son, then he would have someone to carry on the family line in this lifetime. Thus the more one looked at Chang Ziqing, the more one felt that Chang Ziqing was good, while Chen Roqiu had become a piece of cloth that was despised, and one did not even take a look at her. Shen Miao smiled gently. "Do not forget to bribe some money to the Darren in the Yamen." Gu Yu complied and was somewhat puzzled as she asked, "Is young lady helping third master or third Furen? Which side are these tails of silver going to?" Shen Miao let Gu Yu take some money to bribe the people in the Yamen, But one did not know who Shen Miao was bribing, as Shen Miao's letter had not been seen by them. Gu Yu softly said, "It is better not to get involved in this kind of matter. That family is not a good person." Even though her voice was soft, it was still heard by Shen Miao. Shen Miao said, "Neither side." Fighting a lawsuit was the most expensive thing to burn money. Poor families would fight a lawsuit barehanded, so the case would be concluded very quickly. But those who had a little bit of wealth would mostly persevere for a few more days. It was not because of anything else. The people in the yamen also wanted to fish for money. The longer the lawsuit, the more the yamen would fish. Chapter 645. In Shen Miao's previous life in the palace, she had seen Fu Xiaoyi wanting to deal with a court official. That court official was originally Prince Zhou's person, and Fu Xiaoyi wanted to deal with him but could not do it openly, so he schemed that court official to be involved in a lawsuit, and at the end he lost his entire family's fortune. The yamen and medical centers were the places that required the most money. Shen Miao only had to think that Shen Wan and Shen Roqiu, these two people, in their previous lifetime, also did not hold back their efforts in framing the first household of the Shen family. She could not wait to tear up these two hypocritical people. Wouldn't it be the biggest joke in the world if a husband and wife, who were originally refined people, had to go to court? Moreover, Shen Miao had to fork out some money herself to remind the Yamen's people to drag on the case a little longer. Not to mention losing one's family fortune, the Shen and Qin family's vitality would be greatly damaged. Moreover, Shen Wan and Shen Roqiu were both people who wanted face, so this time round it was absolutely impossible for them to reconcile. Nothing could be more perfect than this. Shen Miao's gaze turned slightly cold, but Chang Ziqing was actually pregnant at this time. Thinking of the role that Chang Ziqing played in Luo Shuiyan's death in the previous lifetime, Shen Miao could not help but sneer. She said, "Call Imo Qing over and let him find some people to go to Lu province to pick someone up for me." In the Lu province, there was not only Chang Ziqing. Naturally, there was also Chang Ziqing's husband and son. In the previous lifetime, Chang Ziqing had ruined Luo Shuiyan and lived for a long time without any worries before she was exposed. Now this old foundation was exposed by herself. It was necessary to add some jokes to the farce of the third branch. When Shen Miao was thinking about the third household of the Shen family, Shen Wan remained in the residence of Prince Ding. Shen Wan was a smart person in the turmoil of the princes fighting for the throne, but he was always unsure of his own footsteps. The crown prince was legitimate but sick and weak. Prince Zhou had his consort mother and was favored but was arrogant. Prince Li had a wide network of connections but was not favored by Emperor Wenhui. Only Prince Ding formed his own faction but did not seem to be interested in the throne. But Shen Wan had an intuition that Fu Xiaoyi was not as uninterested in the emperor's position as he appeared on the surface. This made Shen Wan even more hesitant, but now that the Shen residents had met with misfortune after Shen Xian's return, even Shen Wan himself felt that it was somewhat unlucky. His official career was getting more and more difficult, and one fear that no one would want to stand in the other prince's team. At this time, he thought of Fu Xiaoyi. In the early years when Shen Xian had not separated from the family, Fu Xiaoyi actually treated Shen Wan well and even had the intention to rope him in. Of course, Shen Wan understood that Fu Xiaoyi was aiming for Shen Xian's military power, but at that time he had more leeway to choose. Thus he delayed and played Tai Chi afterwards. Fu Xiaoyi seemed to understand his intention and was not as warm as he was at the beginning. Now that the Shen family was in decline and was not like before, if Shen Wan still wanted to keep his official career and walk down a prosperous path, adding that Chang Ziqing might be able to give birth to a son for him, Shen Wan's original, neutral, path instantly changed to wanting to break through. Great wealth came with great danger. He still wanted to give it a try. So when Shen Wan finally came to the residence of Prince Ding, he finally chose to defect. Shen Wan himself also felt that it was somewhat funny. If he had made this decision earlier, perhaps Shen Yu would not need to marry into the Wang family, exchange of marriage, and escape. Shen Yu could still win over Fu Xiaoyi's heart. But if Shen Yu did not exchange of marriage, perhaps he and Shen Roqiu would not have come to this step. Chang Ziqing would not be pregnant and he would not seek refuge with Prince Ding. The world's affairs were a freak combination of factors, and fate loved to play tricks on people. Fu Xiuyi sat on the main seat and ordered people to serve tea to Shen Wan. There was no need to say any polite words as both parties were well aware of the purpose of the visit. Fu Xiuyi smiled warmly. Shen Darren is busy with family matters today and suddenly visit. What is the matter? Chapter 646. Shen Wan's face was filled with shame. Now the matter between him and Chen Roqiu had caused the entire court to be in an uproar, and the colleagues looked at him with an expression of watching a joke. This was a painful torment for Shen Wan, who cherished his reputation. Shen Wan said, "This official is willing to sacrifice my life for your highness." When Fu Xiuyi heard it, he only smiled and did not answer. One did not know if he believed Shen Wan's words or not. There were only the two of them and the servants in the entire hall. This kind of silence gradually made the atmosphere tense up. Cold sweat started to form on Shen Wan's forehead. One did not know how long this kind of silence lasted until Shen Wan felt that his entire body was drenched in sweat before he heard Fu Xiuyi's voice from above. "But now that Shen Exen had already left the residence, what about you?" Shen Wan's heart thumped. Fu Xiuyi was indeed targeting Shen Exen. Originally, when the second household had not declined, Shen Wan had guessed that Shen Yuan was working for Fu Xiuyi. It was just that what could Fu Xiuyi make Shen Yuan do? Shen Yuan was taken in by Fu Xiuyi at a young age, and it was not enough just because of his talent. Afterwards, Shen Wan thought clearly that it was most likely that Shen Yuan monitored Shen Exen, or that he did something in Shen Exen's daily affairs. But afterwards Shen Yuan died, and Fu Xiuyi thought that he was lacking a person like Shen Yuan. Afterwards Shen Exen simply went to the Shaochun city, thus this person was not needed. Who knew that 2 years later Shen Exen would return to the capital with a strength that one could not ignore and would inevitably become a dazzling existence in Fu Xiuyi's eyes. Shen Wan carefully said, "Even though he has left the residence, there is still 1 or 2 brotherly sentiments. If your highness has any instructions, this official will definitely do his best." Fu Xiuyi said, "This prince appreciates talented people and also believe in Shen Darren's ability. Coincidentally, there is a matter recently, and since Shen Darren is coincidentally here today, one will not bother others. Since it is one's own people, one believe that Shen Darren will handle it well." Shen Wan was somewhat uneasy. Fu Xiuyi's words were clearly to give him a difficult problem. If it was done well, he would naturally be Fu Xiuyi's people, but if it was not done well, he would not be able to prove that he was a talented person and would be ruthlessly abandoned by Fu Xiuyi. And because of the consequences of this difficult problem, Shen Wan must bear it himself. It was a deal. Shen Wan steeled his heart and said, "Your Highness, please instruct me." Fu Xiuyi looked at him with satisfaction. "This matter is not difficult. This prince knows that General Shen has a daughter, 5th Shen young lady, whom he loves like jewels, and now 5th Shen young lady has reached the age of engagement." Shen Wan abruptly raised his head. Originally, when Shen Miao was chasing after Fu Xiuyi shouting that she wanted to marry Fu Xiuyi did not even look at Shen Miao. Occasionally, when he talked about it with the other princes and courtiers, he would look extremely annoyed. After all, being liked by such an idiot and stupid person was no different from a humiliation to a prince. But now, Shen Wan's heart was pounding. Shen Miao had become more beautiful and her temperament had gradually calmed down. She had shed the original idiotic look and could be said to be a very good noble female in the Ding capital. If Fu Xiuyi wanted to marry Shen Miao, with the enmity between the first and third household of the Shen family, once Shen Miao gained power, she would definitely suppress him. Be it public or private, the better off Shen Miao was, the better off the first household of the Shen family, and the more dangerous it was for Shen Wan. He did not want Shen Miao to walk higher and higher and hoped that Shen Miao would be as cheap as dust. Shen Wan endured the bitterness in his heart and said, "Your Highness, want to marry 5th lady? This prince?" Fu Xiuyi laughed as if he had heard a funny joke. He shook his head and said, "Not this prince. It is this prince's imperial older brother." Chapter 647. Shen Wan was startled. Fu Xiuyi's voice slowly spread to his ears. "Let 5th Shen young lady marry this prince's 4th older brother, Prince Zhou." Shen Wan was surprised at first, but when he thought about it and understood, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. What kind of person was Shen Miao? She was Shen Xian's daughter. The southern Xie and northern Shen, the Xie family was considered to have really declined, and the Shen family of Mingqi was the strongest. Whoever married Shen Miao, that person would have the military power of Mingqi. Shen Miao's identity was destined that she would not be able to marry the powerful dignitaries, and this would make the suspicious Emperor Wenhui even more fearful. It was best for Shen Miao to marry a commoner, but at the very least she could not marry a military official. Most likely it was because of this that Shen Miao had not decided on a marriage even at her current age, because if she were to marry a commoner, Shen Xian would definitely feel that his daughter would be wronged. The dignitaries were like this, so the princes would not dare to have any ideas on Shen Miao. It was still better for the crown prince as he was the legitimate heir, but if any of the other princes were to marry Shen Miao, it would be a clear statement of their ambition to fight for the throne. This kind of heavy weight looked like a blessing, but in fact it was a disaster. At the moment in the fight for the throne, the one in the limelight was actually Prince Zhou's faction. Prince Zhou and Prince Jing's consort mother were favored and they had some abilities. Seeing that the power was getting bigger and more followers, if Shen Miao was involved, then Prince Zhou would be pushed to the teeth of the wind and waves. Emperor Wenhui would definitely be unhappy and the rest of the princes would be jealous. One fear that Prince Zhou would be suppressed miserably. As for the Shen family, there was no need to talk about it. With such a big fanfare, one fear that once the Qin country and the great Liang people leave, the Shen family would die miserably. Killing two birds with one stone, it was done to the point of perfection. Shen Wan's heart suddenly felt timid towards Fu Xiuyi. This person's mind was too deep and too ruthless, which was somewhat scary. Fu Xiuyi did not seem to see Shen Wan's expression and smiled gently. This matter will be handed over to Shendaran. He did not say how to do it and did not say to what extent. Prince Zhou already had a Zhou Wangfei, so if Shen Miao were to marry over, she could only be a Sufei. Shen Wan did not have any confidence in his heart, but it was not good to show it. He cupped his hands towards Fu Xiuyi and said, "This official will do my best." Fu Xiuyi's attitude was neither warm nor cold. If it was 2 years ago, Fu Xiuyi's attitude towards Shen Wan would be better, but the present was different from the past. The Shen family was not as good as before and Shen Wan's head was full of lawsuits, so Fu Xiuyi naturally did not need to value him as much as before. After Shen Wan left the residence of Prince Ding, Pei Lang then walked out from behind the screen. Pei Lang walked to the seat below Fu Xiuyi and looked at the teacup that Shen Wan left behind after drinking the tea. "Your Highness plans to use Shen Wan?" Fu Xiuyi looked at Pei Lang. "What does gentleman think of Shen Wan?" Pei Lang shook his head. Although he has his ways of enduring, he is not ruthless enough. His family is in a mess. If he were to use him, he would inevitably cause trouble in the future. He can be used in small ways, but not in big ways. Fu Xiuyi laughed and looked at Pei Lang with eyes full of appreciation. "Gentlemen and I have the same thoughts." Finishing, he sighed again. "Ever since the Xie brothers died, it is not easy to pass some things to others to do. If the Xie brothers had been raised properly, they would have been useful children, but now they have been completely destroyed. Even though they are not important pawns, they still added trouble." Pei Lang frowned. "Your Highness does not intend to put Shen Wan in an important position?" Grass on the wall. Fu Xiuyi's smile was somewhat superficial. In the past he was wavering, but now the situation forced him to seek refuge with me. I do not dare to use this kind of person with an uncertain mind. One only need him to do some small things. Pei Lang said again, "Let Shen Wan think of ways to matchmake the fourth prince and Shen Miao. Does your Highness think it is feasible?" Chapter 648. One do not know if it is feasible or not. It is just that since this matter is Shen Wan's only chance, he would definitely make it happen at all costs. The Shen family skills are high and Prince Zhou is the strongest. Now that it has reached a sufficient stage, if one does not take action, one fear that it would really be too late. Pei Lang no longer spoke. But he saw Fu Xiuyi suddenly said, "If I were to marry Shen Miao, what does teacher think?" Pei Lang's heart jumped fiercely, but his face still had a light and breezy look as he analyzed. One fear that it would not be good and would attract His Majesty's suspicions and also make the rest of the princes fearful. Fu Xiaoyi nodded his head and there was some regret in his expression. One could not tell what kind of tone it was in his words. It is a pity. Pei Lang did not understand what Fu Xiaoyi was feeling pity about. In terms of feelings, Fu Xiaoyi did not seem to have any other feelings for Shen Miao. If there was, he would not be so cold when Shen Miao chased him to the point that the entire Ding capital knew about it. If at that time Fu Xiaoyi had any methods of shielding Shen Miao, then the rumors would not be so unscrupulous. What exactly was Fu Xiaoyi feeling pity about? Pity that the Shen family's military power was not fated to be in his hands? Pei Lang did not know what the answer was. After Fu Xiaoyi left, he also returned to his own room, and when he saw that there was no one else, he then started to write a letter. Tonight the residence of Prince Rui was somewhat austere. The servants all had a dignified expression and did not dare to breathe loudly. Today when His Highness Prince Rui returned, his expression was very cold, and Gao Yang and Ji Yushu, who were beside him, also had a rare solemn expression. Tai Yi and Nan Qi brought along a person dressed like a guard and entered the room with Prince Rui. Even the personal study was renovated to be very spacious, and with the addition of some magnificent furnishings, it did not look like a study but had the feeling of a corner of a palace. There was a person sitting on the main seat and was playing with the thumb ring in his hands in boredom. He was wearing a dark purple embroidered robe, and the clothes slowly covered the spacious chair, as if a purple cloud was flowing down from the sky. The person who was kneeling on the ground was prostrating himself. He could only see the boots in front of him. It was a greenish-black deerskin boot with the neatest sewing. The fine and dense sewing did not move at all. The sewing seemed to have silver edges. It was just a boot, but it was enough to show the owner's arrogant and luxurious temperament. Xie Jingxing had one leg on the soft couch and was half leaning on the seat as he looked down at the person below. His eyebrows and eyes were unbelievably handsome. When he smiled, it was as if the entire garden of spring could not be blocked. However, when his face was cold, it made people shiver. Those beautiful peach blossom eyes seemed to have turned into an icy spring at the peak of a mountain in an instant. He opened his mouth faintly, and his voice was emotionless. "Tell me, who is your master?" The man gritted his teeth and said nothing. Gao Yang and Ji Yushu also frowned tightly. Xie Jingxing smiled lazily and said, "It is fine if you do not want to say. Throw him into the tower prison." He suddenly bent down and got closer to that guard and said softly, "Anyway, I know who it is." The guard's expression did not change. His body was riddled with scars. It was obvious that he had suffered a lot of torture before this. Xie Jingxing smiled slightly, but the smile did not reach his eyes. He said, "Take his token." Ji Yushu and Gao Yang were startled at the same time and could not help but look at that guard. The guard was startled for a moment before a trace of struggle flashed on his face. Just the word, token, it was obvious that Xie Jingxing already knew his identity. Everyone knew that Prince Rui of the Great Liang was ruthless and unscrupulous in his actions, and the tower prison was an existence that made one tremble in fear. Even he would tremble in his heart. The guard steeled his heart and simply knelt down and kowtowed a few times to Xie Jingxing. "Your Highness, have mercy." Chapter 649. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at the other person and sneered, "The people that imperial older brother sent are just like this." His tone had a deep sense of ridicule. One thought that their bones would be hard. Boring. Ji Yushu could not help but speak. "What does His Majesty want you to do to 5th Shin young lady?" This person was caught at the entrance of the Shin mansion. It was also fortunate that Xie Jingxing had sent his own people to keep a close watch on the Shin mansion to prevent any accidents from happening. This person's martial arts were extremely high, and he was also quite vigilant, so Xie Jingxing's people had to wait for a few days before catching him. Now that he thought about it, it was not strange. After all, he was a spy by Emperor Yongli's side. If he did not even have this ability, then the Great Liang imperial family would be in danger. That guard originally wanted to say something, but when he met Xie Jingxing's smiling yet not smiling gaze, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine. One had to know that in the entire imperial family of the Liang dynasty, This lazy and handsome Prince Rui, who always had a casual smile on his face, was the one that should not be provoked. 2 years ago, when he returned to the Great Liang, there were many forces in the imperial court that were secretly playing with each other, but they were all settled by Xie Yuan. Those ministers that were against him were also uprooted, and not even their roots were left. His methods were ruthless and his schemes were deep, but the way he did things made it impossible for others to find fault with him. However, other than fighting in the court, he had also done a number of beautiful things, leaving those conservative old ministers speechless. This was the reason why people loved and hated him. Now, under his sharp eyes that could see through everything, the guard did not dare to hide anymore and could only reveal everything. His Majesty knew about 5th Shin young lady's matter and feared that your Highness was staying in Mingqi because of 5th Shin young lady, so he sent this subordinate to investigate. This subordinate did not want the subordinate to harm 5th Shin young lady, it was all to investigate. Gao Yang's and Jiu Shu's expressions were not good at the same time. Even though Emperor Yonglu was in the Great Liang, it did not mean that there were no spies in Mingqi's Ding capital. It was hard to say what would happen after discovering the relationship between Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing. But with Emperor Yongli's personality, he would never allow anything outside of his plan to happen. Shen Miao was after all a Mingqi's person, and this identity would bring about many variables. From Jiu Shu and Gao Yang's point of view, it was not certain that Emperor Yonglu would agree with Xie Jingxing's thoughts. However, the most troublesome thing was that these two brothers were equally stubborn. Once they decided on something, they would never change their minds. If Emperor Yonglu were to obstruct him, how would Xie Jingxing obediently give in? In addition, as compared to Emperor Yonglu, Xie Jingxing had experienced quite a number of assassinations in Mingqi, and his temperament was even more unruly. If both brothers were to really fight, one feared that there would be a reign of terror and the sky would turn dark. Sure enough, when Xie Jingxing heard this, he laughed and said, "Oh? Since it is only to investigate, then there is no need to lock you in the tower prison. I will send you back to the Great Liang." The guard was slightly startled, and before he could speak, Xie Jingxing's voice was heard from above. "You know what to say?" The guard hesitated for a moment. Prince Rui and Emperor Yonglu were equally terrifying existences, and his heart was in despair as he probed, "Does your Highness and 5th Shin young lady have any relation?" Xie Jingxing looked at him with interest, and his beautiful eyes seemed to have some deep meaning. He slowly said, "How can imperial older brothers people lie?" Gao Yang gripped the fan in his hands tightly, and Jiu Shu swallowed his saliva. "Go back and tell imperial older brother that he is right. This prince stayed behind because of Shen Miao." The youth's lips hooked up into a gentle smile, but his brows were unyielding as he lightly said, "Do not have delusions of changing anything because this prince does not allow it." "All right, remember to remind imperial older brother." He yawned, "Do not forget the agreement with this prince." The tranquil night covered up everything. It covered up the undercurrents in the residence of Prince Rui, covered up the schemes in Prince Ding's residence, and also covered up the whispers in the general residence. Qiu Shui Yuan had already been taken over by someone, and the original mistress returned to her maiden family in a fit of anger and even fought a lawsuit with her husband's family. With this kind of incompatible fire and water, everyone knew that Chen Roqiu would not be able to have her former glory. And this new Yin Yang had gentle and magnanimous brows and even had a child in her tummy. In the future, one feared that she would ascend to heaven. There were not a few servants who stepped on the low and flattered the high, so they immediately turned around to flatter this new master. Chang Zai-Ching sat in the room and touched her tummy with a gentle smile hanging on her face. The western courtyard was after all too far away and was somewhat deserted. Old Shen Furen found someone to calculate and found out that the child in Chang Zai-Ching's tummy was a son. She immediately provided for Chang Zai-Ching, and Shen Wan even brought Chang Zai-Ching to Qiu Shui Yuan so that it would be convenient to take care of her. Chang Zai-Ching was already the new female mistress of Qiu Shui Yuan, and she was also very satisfied with the current situation. Even though Chen Roqiu's skills were deep, she was after all old and did not give birth to a son, thus she was at a disadvantage in this battle. Shen Wan entered the room and put down the tonic in his hands before walking over to Chang Zai-Ching's side and touched her tummy before smiling. "Very good. Chang Zai-ching responded with a smile but was suddenly startled before saying softly, "Is there something troubling, master?" Shen Wan was startled for a moment before smiling bitterly. "There is really a troublesome matter." Chapter 650. "There is indeed something troubling me," Shen Wan answered with a bitter smile. Song Zai-ching patted Shen Wan's hands and smiled. "If master has any troubles, there is no harm in telling me about it. Perhaps I might be able to help." Shen Wan looked at Chang Zai-ching's stomach. Even though he could not see anything at the moment, he still said, "Never mind. It is the proper matter for you to recuperate your body in the residence. There's no need to pay attention to these complicated and trifling matters. Moreover, they're all matters of the imperial court." Song Zai-ching was not discouraged and smiled. "Originally, before entering the door, master treated me as a confidant and would always tell me about troubles. Whether it was the trifling matters of the inner court or the affairs of the court, they had never been as distant as they were now. Why are you not as good as you used to be now that you've entered the sect?" She shook her head and said, "I don't only know how to sew clothes and pick flowers in the backyard. Although I'm not the smartest, it's much easier for two people to think of a way than one person. Why don't you tell me about it?" Her gentle words struck a chord in Shen Wan's heart. Chang Zhaoqing was different from Chen Roqiu. Chen Roqiu was a real, pampered wife, and even though she was gentle and graceful in the past, she would never intervene in Shen Wan's career. When Shen Wan's career was at its peak, it was good to have such a lovely wife who abided by her duties. But if there were any problems, Chen Roqiu would not be able to help at all in the officialdom. Song Zai-ching was different. Before Shen Wan had revealed his thoughts to Song Zai-ching, he called Song Zai-ching as a friend. The two of them talked about everything under the sky. Song Zai-ching's knowledge was not short and could occasionally point out the matters of the court, thus Shen Wan appreciated her a lot. At this moment, hearing Chang Zai-ching say that, Shen Wan's heart suddenly moved slightly. Chang Zai-ching not only had her own views on the matters of the court, the most important thing was that Chang Zai-ching was a female. There were too many twists and turns in how to let Shen Miao marry Prince Zhou. If it was 2 years ago when Shen Miao's temperament had not changed, it would naturally be very easy. As long as he said a few words in front of Shen Miao, he would be able to incite her, but now it was not possible. Moreover, the relationship with the first household was tense, so it was impossible to start from Shen Xian's side. For this kind of marriage, perhaps one would only be able to obtain some gains by asking Song Zai-ching. Thinking of this, Shen Wan looked at Song Zai-ching and asked probingly, "If one say that I want Fifth Lady to marry His Highness Prince of Zhou, what do you think should be done?" "His Highness Prince Zhou?" Chang Zai-ching was surprised for a moment before asking curiously, "Why let Fifth Young Lady marry to Prince Zhou?" Shen Wan chuckled, "I just said that casually." Even though he had already treated Chang Zhaoqing as his woman, but since he was working for Prince Ding, his mouth must be tight, thus he did not dare to casually reveal this confidential matter. Even if he did not say it, Chang Zai-ching was a smart person and quickly understood. She did not linger on the matter and said, "Fifth Shen Young Lady is General Shen's beloved daughter and one that he pampers in his palms. Now that His Highness Prince of Zhou already has a Wangfei, if Fifth Shen Young Lady were to marry over, at most she would be a Sufei. General Shen and Shen Foreign would definitely not agree to it." Shen Wan furrowed his brows and nodded. His expression showed that he was in a dilemma. When Chang Zai-ching saw it, her heart moved slightly. If Shen Miao married to Prince Zhou, no matter what, it would not be a good thing for Shen Miao to be a Sufei. Even though Chang Zai-ching did not understand what Shen Wan's intention was, she was certain that once this matter was successful, Shen Miao would not have a good ending. Thinking of that delicate and pretty young female's pair of clear eyes that seemed to be able to see through one's heart, Chang Zai-ching's heart felt somewhat uneasy. One did not know why, but Chang Zai-ching had an instinctive fear and uneasiness towards Shen Miao, as if Shen Miao's existence would cause her some unpredictable consequences. Chang Zai-ching was also a person who sought stability, thus if Shen Miao could be settled, it might not be a bad thing for her. Chapter 651. She looked at her lower abdomen. Now that there was a child in her abdomen, the position of the matriarch of the third household of the Shen family was set in stone. Not only must it be set in stone, it must be done well, thus any person or thing that could be a threat should be removed. But it is not that there is no way at all. Chang Ziqing smiled sweetly. Shen Wan's eyes brightened as he asked, "What methods do you have?" "That would depend on what kind of attitude Master wants Prince Zhou to have." Chang Ziqing asked, "Does Prince Zhou want to marry or not?" Shen Wan's heart moved. Prince Zhou would definitely not be willing to have this marriage, as the Prince of Mingqi was not a fool. If he were to marry Shen Miao now, it would undoubtedly be setting up a target for himself. Prince Zhou was not willing to have a relationship with Shen Miao, but Fu Xiuyi's aim was to make it seem that Prince Zhou wanted to have this marriage with Shen Miao. He said, Prince Zhou would definitely not be willing, but one must let others think that Prince Zhou is willing. Chang Ziqing thought about it and said, "This is somewhat difficult. But females have always cherished their reputation, and if one's reputation was ruined, one would not have anything to rely on for the rest of one's life. I think that if Master wants to be the matchmaker, there is no harm in starting from fifth young lady." Shen Wan saw Chang Ziqing's confident look and asked, "There is no harm in speaking." Shen Furen and General Shen are not willing for fifth young lady to be a side consort. In this world, there is no worst and only worse. If there is a worse ending than fifth young lady being a side consort, General Shen and Shen Furen would definitely take a step back and choose to let fifth young lady marry Prince Zhou. Shen Wan's heart moved. He heard Chang Ziqing continuing to speak. As for something worse than being a side consort, there are many. For example, being kidnapped by bandits, being tainted by hooligans, or not knowing who the adulterer is. Under this kind of suppression, one would suddenly get a piece of news. That person might be Prince Zhou. No matter if it is Prince Zhou or not, General Shen and Shen Furen would choose Prince Zhou because this is the best one and also the one that can protect fifth Shen young lady. Chang Ziqing did not say it very clearly, but smart people would only say 70 to 80%. In a blink of an eye, Shen Wan understood 70 to 80% and felt that everything was clear in front. Chang Ziqing smiled as she touched her lower abdomen and smiled gently. "It is just that these are all sinister methods. If one did not see Master frowning, I would not have said these words." Shen Wan had obtained this wonderful plan, so how would he feel that Chang Ziqing's method was sinister? At the moment he felt that he had picked up a treasure. Chang Ziqing was able to get a son in one stroke and was smart enough to solve his current problem. He immediately kissed Chang Ziqing's cheek and said with a smile, "With such a beauty, how would I dare to frown?" After saying that, he stood up again, as if he couldn't wait to do something, and said, "I still have some matters to attend to, I'll come see you later." Chang Ziqing naturally complied gently. After Shen Wan left, Zhao Mama, who was by Chang Ziqing's side, walked over and said with some worry, "Third Master is going to deal with fifth Shen young lady? Perhaps?" Chang Ziqing smiled. It is not the first time that the first and third household of the Shen family are at odds. "Miss, are you planning to help third master deal with fifth miss?" Zhao Mama asked. "There is still General Shen above fifth young lady. Will anything happen to miss doing this? This matter was not done by me, so how can it be counted on me?" Chang Ziqing's smile did not change. As long as Shen Wan is not a fool, he would not be easily caught by others. Moreover, if something really happened, the Shen family would be busy dealing with Shen Miao's rumors, so how would they have the mind to care about other things? Zhao Mama was still not assured. Why would young lady help third master deal with fifth young lady? Chapter 652. To come up with strategies for one's husband is what a proper matriarch should do. One must let him feel that I am different from Chen Roqiu. Let him feel that I am able to do the things that Chen Roqiu is able to do and that I am able to do the things that Chen Roqiu is unable to do, then he would not be able to leave me. Chang Ziqing caressed her lower abdomen and narrowed her eyes. Moreover, I have a premonition that if one does not remove Shen Miao, one fear that it would bring about a big disaster. When Zhao Mama heard this, she jumped in shock and did not say anything more. Chang Ziqing changed the topic of conversation. "Speaking of which, is there any news from the Lu province?" Zhao Mama said, "The people that were sent are on the way, and no matter how fast they travel, they would still need a few days, so they should be back in a few days." Let them arrange things properly. A trace of coldness flashed in Song Ziqing's eyes. My past cannot be known to anyone. Shen Miao received a letter from Pei Lang that night. In the letter, it said that Fu Xiaoyi actually let Shen Wan think of ways to let her marry Prince Zhou. Jing Zhe and Guyu saw that Shen Miao's expression was not good and thought that something happened, so they asked, "Did young lady encounter something bad?" Shen Miao shook her head, but her heart was secretly vigilant. In the past and present lifetime, Fu Xiaoyi had the same calculations. No matter if she could marry Prince Zhou or not, as long as she was involved with Prince Zhou, the Shen family and Prince Zhou would not have a good time. The Shen family had angered Emperor Wenhui and made Emperor Wenhui feel that the Shen family supported Prince Zhou and wanted to secretly take a side in the fight for the heir apparent. As for Prince Zhou, he was the target of public criticism. Without using a single soldier, he was able to remove two potential dangers for Fu Xiaoyi. Fu Xiaoyi really had a good calculation. As for her rather capable third shoe, he wanted to tie her and Prince Zhou together. Needless to say, he would definitely use some methods that could not be seen in public. As Shen Miao thought about it, she could not help but sneer in her heart. No matter how long it was, the third household of the Shen family could use the first household's people without any scruples. If it was possible to use the entire first household as a stepping stone for glory and wealth. Such intentions were to be put to death. She said, "Let Mo Qing come in." Jingzhe went outside to call Mo Qing over. Shen Miao asked Mo Qing, "Have you found the person that I asked you to investigate in the Lu province?" Mo Qing cupped his hands and said, replying to young lady, the Lu province's people had already replied and seemed to have found the person. However, there is another group of people who are also trying to find out the whereabouts of the father and son. I heard that they have issued a Jianghu order, regardless of whether they are dead or alive. Shen Miao suddenly laughed out, but no matter how one looked at that smile, there was some coldness in it. Chang Ziqing is really ruthless. Regardless of life or death, the people that Shen Miao asked Mo Qing to find were Chang Ziqing's husband and son, and now other than Chang Ziqing, who else would be chasing after that pair of father and son? Now that Song Ziqing had clung onto Shen Gui, she even wanted to kill her own husband and son to prevent future troubles. It was no wonder that she could walk so far in the previous lifetime. Just this kind of ruthlessness was something that many people could not compare to. Send someone to inform the people in the Lu province to protect them father and son and bring them back to the Ding capital as soon as possible. Shen Miao said. Mo Qing nodded his head. Shen Miao suddenly thought of something and said, "Wait." She said, "Help me bring a letter to Manager Ji of Feng Xian Pawnshop." The lawsuit between the Shen and Chen family was really long and lingering. Many people thought that the case had been settled for a long time, but upon asking, it was not over yet. Almost 2 whole months had passed before this case came to an end. Chen Roqiu was indeed jealous of having no son, and in addition to old Shenfuren saying that Chen Roqiu did not treat her with respect, at the end Shenwan still gave Chen Roqiu a divorce letter. This marriage that was initially praised by everyone as a talented man and beautiful woman, a celestial couple that others envied, actually ended in such a farce. And the most ruthless thing about Shenwan was that after divorcing Chen Roqiu, he quickly promoted Chang Ziqing as a noble concubine. Chapter 653. But even so, this lawsuit was a lose-lose situation for both parties. Shenwan's career was hindered and the residents also spent a lot of money. It was just that in comparison, the Chen family was obviously more miserable. The Chen family had some reputation, but because they were a scholarly family, they did not have much money. Old Master Chen initially fought this lawsuit because he did not want others to look down on the Chen family, but he did not expect that this lawsuit would go on for so long. After fighting for a full 2 months, it was not an exaggeration to say that the Chen family was bankrupt. Because of this, old Master Chen's vitality was greatly damaged and blamed everything on Chen Roqiu. Chen Roqiu's mother also had some complaints. Chen Roqiu was originally hurt by Shenwan and hated that Shenwan did not care about old feelings and was also angry that Chang Ziqing was two-faced. The saddest thing was that there was still no news of Xinyu, and now that she was despised by her own parents, She felt that all her hopes were in tatters and was almost at the end of despair. What she did not know was that the daughter that she could not find was currently in the residence of the Qin Prince in Yanqing Lane. In the residence of the Qin Prince, Shen Yu was dressing up in front of a mirror. The clothes that she wore were of the best quality. Even though the Shen family was a wealthy official family, it could not be compared to the fabrics in the Qin country's imperial palace. The jewelry that she wore was also very luxurious. She was covered in silk and looked like a different person from the past. If one were to say that the Shen Yu in the past followed Chen Rochio's instructions and dressed up elegantly and was not bothered by the vulgar gold and silver, now her appearance looked much more expensive. Naturally, it was because Shen Yu had become Huang Fu Hao's concubine. The maid by her side carefully served hot tea to Shen Yu, but Shen Yu's expression was somewhat impatient. She had a pretty face, and under Chen Rochio's daily nurturing, she could be said to be gentle and understanding. Moreover, she could see that Huang Fu Hao had some interest in Shen Yu, so she picked out topics related to Shen Yu. One day, Huang Fu Hao frivolously asked her if she was willing to be his concubine. Shen Yu thought for a night and agreed the next day. She did not have any other way out. The news spread like wildfire. The lawsuit between the Shen family and the Chen family had almost become a joke. Song Zaiqing was pregnant, and if she gave birth to a son, one feared that this daughter would be thrown to the back of the Shen family's head. Even if it was not a son, because Chen Rochio caused Shen Wan to be pointed at, Shen Wan and old Shen Furen would hate her. Her name had already been occupied by Shen Dongling, and these days there were rumors that the Minister of Lands Wang Bai doted on his lovely wife, Shen Yu. The more it was said, the more Shen Yu's heart was filled with regret and unwillingness. No matter if she really liked Wang Bai or not, as long as she thought that the comfortable life that Shen Dongling was living now should have been hers, Shen Yu's heart was extremely unreconciled. She hated Shen Wan for being heartless and also hated Chen Rochio for not living up to expectations. And now she understood that based on her current self, it was even more impossible to get close to Fu Xiuyi. If she were to return to the Shen family, Shen Wan might be angry with Chen Rochio and arrange a shoddy marriage for her. Shen Yu also had the unique coldness of the Shen family in her bones. Shen Wan and her had been father and daughter for so many years, and at the beginning they were happy and affectionate, but now, Shen Yu's gaze towards Shen Wan was even more vigilant than outsiders. Shen Yu thought that rather than being married to an unknown family, it was better to be Huang Fu Hao's concubine. Huang Fu Hao was handsome and young and was also the crown prince of the Qin country. If in the future she was favored by Huang Fu Hao, perhaps she could be promoted. The most important thing was that if she could borrow Huang Fu Hao's power, perhaps she could protect herself and Chen Rochio. Thus Shen Yu became Huang Fu Hao's concubine. Chapter 654. In all fairness, Huang Fu Hao treated Shen Yu well, and naturally Shen Yu deliberately fawned on him. But currently in Mingqi, Shen Yu was the most favored one among all the concubines that Huang Fu Hao brought. Perhaps Huang Fu Hao also enjoyed the taste of a daughter of an official being his concubine and was very greedy for novelty. Shen Yu asked the servant beside her, "Has the letter for the Chen family been delivered?" The servant said, "It is already on the way and should be arriving soon." Shen Yu unhappily drank a mouthful of tea. Chen Rochio received a letter. She did not know who sent this letter to her room. The Chen family's master and Furen did not want to see Chen Rochio, as Chen Rochio had hurt the Chen family's strength and the public money had decreased by a lot. Older brother and sister-in-law saw her as a troublemaker, thus Chen Rochio's days were not good and she simply stayed in the room all day and did not go out. She looked around but didn't see anyone. Curious, she opened the envelope and a letter fell out. As soon as she opened the letter, she was stunned at first sight. The handwriting on the letter was very clear to Chen Rochio, as it was Shen Yu's handwriting. Shen Yu's calligraphy was the only copy of the calligraphy master Wang Furen that Chen Rochio had specially found for her. Shen Yu's strength was soft and she was able to learn most of Wang Furen's handwriting, but she did not have enough strength so Chen Rochio could tell with one glance that it was Shen Yu's handwriting. She quickly sized up the surroundings, and when she saw that there was no one else in the room, she then boldly opened it. The top only said to meet her at a somewhat isolated inn in the eastern part of the city, and there was no signature, but Qinruoqiu understood in her heart that it was Xinyu who secretly arranged to meet her. The stone in Qinruoqiu's heart was put down. Xinyu could still write a letter to her, and looking at the unhurried handwriting, it was obvious that she was still safe. The original worries were swept away, and Qinruoqiu slowly calmed down. These days the blows came one after another, and it made her somewhat flustered and unable to socialize, and felt that life was hopeless. But Xinyu's letter seemed to light up her hope. With a daughter, Qinruoqiu's heart was suddenly filled with fighting spirit. At least she was not alone, so why could a person like Chang Ziqing enter the room and snatch what belonged to her? Chang Ziqing wanted to give birth to a son for Shenwan. She wanted to see if Chang Ziqing had this ability. With a backbone, Qinruoqiu gradually calmed down. In the following day, the servants around discovered that the haggard and irritable Chang Ziqing seemed to be in a better mood, as if she had returned to the gentle and graceful third Shenforan of the past. Even when the servants collided with her, Qinruoqiu only laughed it off. If an astute person were to look, they would discover that in Qinruoqiu's eyes, there seemed to be a renewed fighting spirit that could not be extinguished. Early in the morning the next day, Qinruoqiu went out. No one from the Qin family stopped her. Madame Chen was a little worried, but she didn't say anything after old Master Qin glared at her. Qinruoqiu's older brother and sister-in-law were even more dismissive. If it was in the past, Qinruoqiu would quarrel with the few sister-in-law, but today she was not in the mood. She was wearing an unassuming brown short skirt. The skirt was of an old style from a few years ago, worn by Madame Chen when she was young. When she came out from the Shen residence, she was not able to get a single cent of silver, and because she was in a fit of pique, she only took the jewelry and did not even bring much clothes out. Afterwards she was busy with the lawsuit and did not have the time to buy it. At the moment, the Qin family could not even afford to buy it. Wearing unfitting and outdated clothes, Qinruoqiu could only suppress the humiliation in her heart. She was wearing a bamboo hat and others could not see her appearance, but even if they were to see it, one feared that they would not be able to link this shabbily dressed and haggard-looking woman with the talented female that everyone in the Ding capital applauded. Chapter 655. In order to save money, Qinruoqiu could only hire an old horse carriage. When the horse carriage reached the east of the city, Qinruoqiu paid the money and quickly walked towards the inn that was mentioned in the letter. Upon entering the inn, Qinruoqiu looked around and did not see Xinyu's figure. Just as she was feeling suspicious in her heart, a waiter walked towards her and glanced at her before asking, "Is Furen looking for a young lady?" Qinruoqiu was startled for a moment before nodding her head. Now that the entire Ding capital knew about the lawsuit between her and Shenwan, she was somewhat guilty and feared that she would be recognized and pointed at. She was even more afraid that Xinyu would be discovered. That waiter said, "Furen, please follow me." The waiter brought Qinruoqiu to a room on the upper floor of the inn and stopped at the door before smiling. "The person that Furen is waiting for is inside." Then he left by himself. Qinruoqiu pushed the door open and saw a young female sitting at the table in the room. No matter how Qinruoqiu recognized that back view, who else could it be other than Xinyu? Qinruoqiu closed the door and cried out involuntarily, "Yue!" Xinyu turned her head over and could not help but be startled when she saw Qinruoqiu's appearance. It was until Qinruoqiu went forward to hold her hands that Xinyu could see Qinruoqiu's face clearly before calling out, "Mother!" But then she frowned. "How did you become like this?" If one did not see it with one's own eyes, Xinyu would not believe that this sloppily dressed and simple female would be her noble, gentle, and generous mother. When Qinruoqiu heard it, a trace of resentment flashed across her face and she gritted her teeth. "If it was not for that slut Ziqing and your heartless father, how would I end up like this?" Finishing, she looked at Xinyu anxiously. "Yue, where have you been these days? Do you know that mother's heart is very anxious? Are you all right? Did something happen?" Qinruoqiu only had Xinyu as a daughter and normally she would be pampered and loved, so the concern at the moment was not fake. When Xinyu heard it, she felt somewhat sad, but her face was still smiling. "Mother, do not be afraid. I am living very well now. I have found a backer that is even nobler than Wang Qian. With this backer, The Shen family will not dare to bully us in the future. Chen Roqiu asked suspiciously, "Who are you talking about?" Shen Yu hesitated for a while before saying, "His Highness the Crown Prince of the Qin country." Chen Roqiu cried out in surprise, only to hear Shen Yu quickly continuing to explain, "His Highness the Crown Prince treats me very well. At the beginning when I left the Shen family, it was His Highness the Crown Prince who saved me. After that he wanted to send me back, but the Shen family was in trouble, so I stayed in the Crown Prince's residence. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is a good person. Mother, don't feel bad about it. I'm really following His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. It's much better than following those people of the Wang clan who say one thing but mean another. I can't be on equal footing with Shindong Ling, right? If I return to the Shen family, grandmother and father are already dissatisfied with me. Who knows how they will betroth me? Mother, can you just listen to me this once?" Chen Roqiu instinctively felt that it was not good, but after hearing that Huangfu Hao saved Xin Yu, her expression slightly eased. But at the end the other party was not a person of Mingqi. Even if Chen Roqiu did not understand the affairs of the court, she had been influenced by Shen Wan for so many years and had a basic vigilance. He is after all a person of the Qin country, moreover he is the crown prince. Seeing that Chen Roqiu still did not agree, Xin Yu's heart hardened and simply lied. His Highness the Crown Prince said that in the future when he returns to the Qin country, he will bestow me with a new identity and let me become his sufei. Is this true? Chen Roqiu was surprised for a moment. If Xin Yu were to leave Mingqi and become the sufei of the Crown Prince's residence in the Qin country, in the future she would be able to enjoy endless glory and splendor. After experiencing Shen Wan's matter, Chen Roqiu's current thinking was different from before. What was the use of feelings? Feelings were too illusory. When the flowers are in bloom and the moon is round, one would be intimate, but in the blink of an eye, one would be treated coldly. And those smelly silver, riches and splendor that were mentioned in the books were the things that one could really rely on. Without money, the Chen family could mock and ridicule this daughter of theirs. If their family had a sufei of the crown prince. Chen Roqiu's heart slowly warmed up. Absolutely true. Xin Yu said. Chen Roqiu hesitated for a moment before saying, "Let this matter be discussed in the future. There is still one more matter at hand." Xin Yu asked, "What matter?" "Chang Ziqing, that slut, schemed against me behind my back, saying one thing in front of me and another behind my back. I fell into her trap. Now I have become a street rat, but the person I hate the most is not Chang Ziqing but your father. If it was not for your father's protection, how would I end up like this?" He did not even put the past decades of husband and wife relationship in his eyes and let them live a good life with a clear conscience. I am not reconciled. The hate. Chapter 656. I am not reconciled. The hate. Chen Roqiu's words were filled with deep hatred. Now her face was haggard, and when she said those words, her expression was so ferocious that even Xin Yu jumped in shock. Xin Yu said, "Mother, what are you talking about? You have also seen the matter." Chen Roqiu gritted her teeth. "Your father and I can be considered to have congenial feelings for each other and have seen everything for so many years. I treat him wholeheartedly and never thought that he would guard me and live alone, but he cannot find someone to humiliate me. Even if he chased me out, he would still go against the Chen family in court. Now that the Chen family's luck is badly damaged, the Chen family would look at me with all kinds of ridicule. It is your father and Chang Ziqing that forced me to such a desperate situation. What is my reputation in the Ding capital? A hen that cannot lay eggs? A jealous woman? This is what your father is repaying me with." As Chen Roqiu spoke, she sneered and said, "And that old fart, after marrying into the Chen family, she always pick on me. Isn't it because she herself is a third-rate female singer, so she cannot see others doing well? This time the matter between Chang Ziqing and your father was also pushed by her behind the scenes. Those people in the Shen family are all not good things." Xin Yu could not help but frown as she felt that Chen Roqiu's words were like a shrew scolding the streets. But speaking of the Shen family, until now Xin Yu did not feel anything. Sure enough, following that, Chen Roqiu looked at her and said, "In the beginning when your father wanted you to marry into the Wang family, I thought that you clearly liked someone else in your heart, but your father coaxed me and said that only the Wang family could protect you, so I could only agree. Who knows what kind of people the Wang family is? To actually not acknowledge you because of Shindong Ling, and now you do not even have your own identity. It is really too much of a bully. If your father had half a bit of consideration for the father-daughter relationship, one think that he would stand up for you, but look at what your father did. He actually wanted you to apologize to the Wang family and even want to be on equal footing with Shindong Ling? Why is it that you, the dignified young lady of the Shen family, have to be on equal footing with a Shu daughter? This is simply the biggest joke in the world. Does he even see you as his own daughter? Chen Rochio's words were full of provocation. Currently Chen Rochio had nothing and there was no one standing on her side. It was not easy to find a daughter and she feared that Xin Yu would be coaxed back by Shen Wan's few words, then she would really be alone. If Xin Yu was still with her, Chen Rochio would at least have something to think about. When Xin Yu heard it, her expression sank. Speaking of which, it wasn't that there wasn't any father-daughter relationship between her and Shen Wan, but what she hated the most about the Shen family was that they had used her marriage as a raft, causing her to be unable to return home. It was said that it was for her own good, but Xin Yu had only suffered. Even though Huang Fu Hao treated her well, she was after all a concubine. Even if it was the crown prince's concubine, it was still the lowest level of concubine and could be casually thrown away like a plaything. In addition to Chen Rochio mentioning that there was someone else in her heart, thinking that there was no possibility at all with Fu Xiuyi, she sighed sadly, "Mother, don't talk about these useless things anymore. It is impossible for His Highness Prince Ding and I have never thought about him in this lifetime. Most likely we are not fated to be together." She then smiled bitterly, "Moreover, His Highness the Crown Prince treats me very well and I also like him very much." Chen Rochio understood her daughter the most, so how could she not see the disappointment in Xin Yu's heart? She was angry and distressed, and even hated Fu Xiuyi. Her own daughter was so good, so why could she not obtain the love of her heart? She took a deep breath and said, "The Shen family harmed us mother and daughter to this extent, so it must not be that simple. Do not worry, mother will definitely vent for us mother and daughter. Not a single person from the Shen family will be able to escape. Since I have been divorced and returned to my maiden family, there is no longer any relationship with the Shen family. Even if something happens to the Shen family, they will not be able to find it on my head. Now that you no longer have the identity of Xinyu, you will definitely be safe." Chapter 657. Mother, what do you want to do? Xinyu heard something wrong in Chen Rochio's words and asked worriedly. Chen Rochio sneered and replied, "Just wait and see. I came over just to inform you. Seeing that you are fine, mother will be at ease." Xinyu could not ask anything from Chen Rochio and could only give up helplessly, but she ignored the flash of ruthlessness in Chen Rochio's eyes. After a few more days, the Ding capital seemed to have calmed down. Nothing new happened. It was just that it was almost the end of the year, and the people on the streets were getting busy. Naturally, everyone in the Shen mansion started to buy New Year's goods and Luo Tan was still very happy. It was just that ever since the last incident, Shen Xian did not allow both of them to go out easily. If they were to go out, they would definitely bring along a bunch of guards, which was somewhat boring. Moreover, Feng and Ning was also feeling guilty about the previous incident and after apologizing, one did not know if it was because of once bitten by a snake, twice shy, that she did not ask both of them out anymore. Luo Tan was also very bored in the residence and after that she was so bored that she followed Luo Ling and Shun Qiu to the training grounds to watch the soldiers train. She dressed up as a male and with Shen Xen and Luo Ling by her side, there was no need to be afraid. Shen Miao, on the other hand, quietly stayed in the room. She did not like to be lively and did not like to go shopping. Staying alone was the most reassuring thing. On this day, Mo Qing came back from outside to say that Song Ziqing's husband and son had been brought to the Ding capital. Because they had to keep it a secret, they didn't dare to casually bring it into the mansion. Instead, they settled it in a private house in the east of the city. Shen Miao said, "You did very well." She remembered that in her previous lifetime, Chang Ziqing's husband was a gambling addict and scoundrel. Because he was a drunkard, he was somewhat rough. If this kind of person were to be contaminated with the Shen mansion and have other thoughts in the future, he would be like a sticky candy, and it would take a lot of effort to clean him up. Moreover, who knew if there were people in the Shen residence monitoring the Shen mansion every day? If they were to see this father and son pair, one feared that there would be more trouble. Mo Qing repeatedly said that he did not dare and asked Shen Miao, "When does young lady plan to see them father and son?" For Shen Miao to bring both father and son to the Ding capital, there must be a use for it. Before that, he would definitely meet with the other party for a chat. Just as Shen Miao was about to answer, she suddenly thought of something and paused. In Pei Lang's letter, Fu Xiuyi gave Shen Wan a difficult problem, which was to marry himself to Prince Zhou. What method did Shen Wanning use? Even though Shen Miao was not very clear, she could more or less guess that it was nothing more than some dirty tricks. Thus, when one stepped out of the Shen mansion's door, there might be danger lurking everywhere outside. These days were calm and peaceful. Perhaps it was because she had not gone out at all. If she had gone out, perhaps the other party would not have given up this opportunity. She wasn't so careless as to jump into a pit of fire even though she knew it was a trap. Moreover, if she was related to the Tian family, she wouldn't be able to get away with just a few words. Shen Miao asked, "How many experts like you are there in the residence?" Mo Qing was surprised for a moment before frowning. Eldest young master should still have some subordinates and master should also have some subordinates. Adding them up, there should not be more than 30 people. Mo Qing was indeed a top expert and there were very few people like him. With 30 people protecting him, probably no one would dare to do anything to him. But this way, he would be too conspicuous on the streets. It would be strange if no one noticed him. Moreover, to suddenly have so many guards following, Shen Qiu and Shen Exen were not fools. Shen Miao shook her head. Understood. Is young lady worried about safety on the road? Mo Qing asked. At that time one can send more manpower. Mo Qing also felt that it was somewhat strange as Shen Miao was never a timid person. Today's matter was somewhat abnormal. Chapter 658. No need. I know what to do. You go down first. Shen Miao said. Mo Qing no longer spoke and silently retreated. Shen Miao looked around and her eyes landed on the half-open window in the room and her heart suddenly moved. She instructed Gu Yu, "Open the window even more." Gu Yu was surprised. "Young lady, it is still windy outside. Be careful not to catch a cold when you open the window." She really felt that it was very strange. When Shen Miao was young, her body was very afraid of the cold, but she did not know why these days she seemed to like to sleep with the windows open at night. But now that it was still broad daylight, why did she still need to open the window? "I am not cold." Shen Miao calmly said, "Go and open it." Gu Yu looked at Shen Miao's thick outer clothes but did not dare to refute and open the window in confusion. For the entire day, Shen Miao stayed in the room and she would glance at the window from time to time, causing Jingzhe and Gu Yu to also look at the window. They thought that there would be some flowers blooming, but there was clearly nothing on the windowsill. Shen Miao read for a while and then walked to the windowsill to stand for a while. One did not know what she was looking at. Unknowingly, the sky turned dark. After having dinner and freshening up, Jingzhe and Gu Yu both withdrew. Shen Miao cut the oil lamp again and did not know how many times she had cut it. She only felt that it was quiet outside, as if the entire Ding capital had fallen into a deep sleep and the window was still empty. A trace of disappointment flashed in Shen Miao's eyes and she used the chess pieces on the table to knock on the oil lamp in boredom. The little pieces of the lamp fell on the table and quickly disappeared. Shen Miao gradually felt sleepy and closed her eyes as she laid on the table to take a nap. When Xie Jingxing entered the room, he saw the scene of Shen Miao sleeping soundly on the table. The window was not closed and the door was specially left open for him. The light from the lamp was slightly swaying due to him bringing the cold wind in. Shen Miao used her hands as a pillow and buried her head in her arms as she slept peacefully. He walked to Shen Miao's side and looked at Shen Miao. He paused for a moment before taking off his cloak and gently covering Shen Miao's body. Shen Miao was after all a vigilant person and when he moved, her body moved slightly to the side. She raised her head but did not open her eyes as she said in a daze, "Shao Li massage Ben Gong's shoulders." Xie Jingxing. He simply leaned against the cabinet at the side and looked at Shen Miao. He laughed and said, "Hey, did you dream of being an empress again?" This abrupt sentence made Shen Miao wake up abruptly, and coincidentally a gust of cold wind blew in from outside. She sneezed, and in a moment she was no longer sleepy. Xie Jingxing walked to the window and closed it, making the room much warmer. He crossed his arms and leaned against the window, asking, "Why are you sleeping here?" Shen Miao looked at the purple-clothed youth, rubbed her eyes and asked, "Why are you only here now?" There was a hint of reproach in her words. She had probably just woken up from her sleep and her mind was not very clear, so she did not realize that there was anything wrong with her words. However, Xie Jingxing noticed it. There was a moment of silence in the room as he walked forward step by step until he reached the table where Shen Miao was sitting. He placed his hands on the table and leaned over to ask, "Are you waiting for me?" Shen Miao recovered to her senses and quickly replied, "No." Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up and his tone was somewhat regretful. "Oh, heard that you waited for me in front of the window for an entire day. So it was not true. Since there is nothing, then I will leave." Finishing, he made a move to leave. "Wait." Shen Miao called out to him. Xie Jingxing said, "What is it? If you know, then why are you still asking me?" Shen Miao gritted her teeth. Facing Xie Jingxing, she really could not use any calmness and magnanimity because this person was exceptionally vile. Thinking about it, her actions outside the window today was too deliberate. Xie Jingxing most likely had arranged people in the Shen mansion, and it was not strange for him to return and report to Xie Jingxing after seeing her like that. It was just that Xie Jingxing clearly knew and still deliberately asked, which was too vile. Chapter 659. "I'm waiting for you. I need your help with something." She took a deep breath and said, "Speak." Xie Jingxing pulled out a chair and sat opposite Shen Miao. He seemed to be in a very good mood, and even his beautiful peach blossom eyes were more charming than usual. There should be quite a number of capable people under you, and there should also be quite a number of experts. There should be quite a number of people like my guard Mo Qing? Shen Miao asked probingly. "That kind of person is considered an expert?" Xie Jingxing sneered, "Why don't I send you a few true experts? Lend it to me for a few people to use." Shen Miao said, "I will pay." Xie Jingxing swept a glance at her and slightly frowned. "What do you want to do?" Shen Miao thought that since Xie Jingxing already knew about the matter of Chang Ziqing's husband and son, there was no need to hide it from him. Chang Ziqing's husband and son in the Lu province have already been brought over to the Ding capital and arranged at a place in the east of the city. One fear that the people around me are not enough. "You want to use my people?" Shen Miao said, "I will pay." Xie Jingxing asked, "Do I look like I lack money?" Shen Miao was silent. Indeed, Xie Jingxing did not look like he lacked money. It was as if he had so much money that he could not use it all and could almost help the world. Even the richest person in Mingqi would not be able to spend as much as him. She simply asked, "What do I have to do for you to agree?" Xie Jingxing narrowed his eyes. "Do you always have this attitude when you ask for help?" Shen Miao finally got annoyed and said, "Forget it. Take it that I did not say anything about this matter. It is already late, Your Highness Prince Rui, please." When she was angry, she would call Xie Jingxing as Your Highness Prince Rui, and it sounded very distant. As expected, Xie Jingxing frowned and looked unhappy. "I did not say that you are not allowed to use it." Xie Jingxing called out to her, "What is the hurry?" Shen Miao sat back down again and Xie Jingxing's beautiful eyes stared at her. His eyes slightly flashed, but he said, "Say that you are stupid, you are really stupid. Why is there a need to give up what is near and seek what is far?" "What do you mean?" "This prince is in a good mood today." Xie Jingxing said unhurriedly, "I will personally accompany you." In the middle of the night, the moon disappeared, leaving only a few stars hanging sparsely in the night sky. Because it was winter, the weather was unusually cold. There was a thin layer of snow on the ground, but when one stepped on it, the sound of ice shards could be heard. However, because it was New Year's Eve, every household hung bright red lanterns under their eaves. The lanterns were red, and the snow was white. It was a very interesting scene. At this moment, there were two people standing under the eaves. The tall young man was bending down slightly, tying a scarf around the face of another person beside him. The two of them were very close, and if they came closer, they could hear the short girl complaining, "Why do I have to wear this?" "Sure," the young man whispered in her ear, "just take it as you're afraid that your peerless beauty will cause trouble if others see it. Don't ask too much." Shen Miao sneered, "Peerless beauty? Then you should block yourself first." "There's no need for me." The young man had a handsome face and did not seem to notice the sarcasm in the other person's words. He said indifferently, "My power is monstrous, and no one dares to find trouble with me." Shen Miao. Shen Miao did not think that after telling Xie Jingxing about the Lu province father and son matter, Xie Jingxing would personally accompany her, and it was actually now. In the middle of the night, one feared that the father and son would be asleep, and Xie Jingxing actually wanted to do it at this time. But Xie Jingxing's reason was that there were fewer people at night, and even if there was someone accompanying during the day, what if no one discovered it? What he said was too reasonable, and Shen Miao could not find any words to refute, but she did not expect that when Xie Jingxing said it, the two of them directly walked on the street. Chapter 660. Although it looked like there was no one on the street, it was hard to avoid feeling uneasy. What's there to be afraid of? My people are following. If there's anything wrong, they'll warn you. Xie Jingxing said. In the time that Shen Miao was distracted, Xie Jingxing had already tied the scarf on her face, revealing only a pair of eyes. Her eyes were round and watery, the black and white of her eyes distinct and clear. Under the dim light of the lantern, she looked even more adorable. Xie Jingxing helped her put on the hat and raised his eyebrows. Not bad. In order to avoid complications, Shen Miao finally found a set of manservant's clothes to wear. The hat was somewhat inappropriate as it often covered her eyes. It was just that she had forgotten to bring her cloak when she came out. Xie Jingxing looked at her for a moment before covering Shen Miao with his cloak and said, "Let's go." Just like that? Shen Miao was extremely surprised. The east of the city is not far. Xie Jingxing disapprovingly said, "It is also good to walk around. You have not seen the Ding capital at night, right?" Shen Miao was silent. Most of the nights that she had seen were within the square palace walls of Mingqi. Sometimes she would sit in the huge Kuaning palace and think about the annoying matters in the inner palace. Once she sat, it would be the entire night. Sometimes she would go to the imperial garden to stroll and see Fu Xiuyi and different beauties talking and laughing. As the head of the 6 palaces, it seemed that her nights were like one night for 10 years, lonely, unfree, cold, and unnoticed by others. She had also regretted and envied the carefree life outside the palace. Xie Jingxing said, "No one here sees you and knows you. Do what you want to do." Shen Miao looked at the other person's handsome brows and suddenly felt some envy in her heart. Speaking of which, Xie Jingxing was able to live till now. He was the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage and also the younger brother of the great Liang's Emperor Yongle, Prince Ru. Everyone could only see the glory on the surface, but the things that he carried were definitely not lesser than Shen Miao. However, his prideful and arrogant nature seemed to have never changed. Nothing external could change his strength. It was as if no matter how the sun and moon changed and how the stars moved, he would still stand there in an unshakable manner. One could only look up to him. Shen Miao envied people with strong hearts. She felt that she was not as strong as Xie Jingxing because she would occasionally think of Wan Yu and Fu Ming and the various things in the past lifetime and would feel tired. Xie Jingxing's eyes were sharp as he pinched her chin and asked, "What is wrong with you?" Shen Miao broke free from his hand and turned her head. "Nothing." She did not want others to know the emotions in her heart, so she turned and walked 2 steps, but she was not used to wearing a man's boots and the ground was slippery because of the ice, so she almost fell down. Luckily Xie Jingxing grabbed her arm and frowned as he reprimanded, "Be careful." But the hand in his sleeves slid down and grabbed Shen Miao's hand. His hand was slender and cold, but it was just nice to wrap Shen Miao's hand in his palm. Shen Miao's heart moved and subconsciously wanted to break free, but she did not expect that Xie Jingxing's grip was so tight that she was unable to break free. Xie Jingxing said faintly, I will hold you so that you will not slip. I will be careful and not slip. Shen Miao said. Then I'm afraid I'll slip. You hold my hand, he continued without even frowning. Shen Miao. Heavy snow covered the entire street, and it was as if the street was silvery white and the lanterns reflected the lovely rain and snow. Shen Miao would look up at the sky from time to time. The sky was very good and very spacious, much better looking than the squarish sky. The street was very quiet and no one would discover her. Some wishes that were not fulfilled in her previous lifetime were fulfilled at this moment. Her palm, which was held by the young man beside her, was slightly damp, but a smile gradually appeared on her face. Chapter 661. The night was really nice, Shen Miao thought. But she did not see that in the eyes of the handsome youth, there was a flash of a smile that was more moving than fireworks. In a house in the east of the city, there was a loud snoring sound coming from one of the rooms. The entire room was filled with the strong smell of alcohol that was pungent to the nose. There were several jars of wine lying on the floor, and the man on the bed was sleeping soundly. In the room next door, there was an 8 or 9-year-old child lying on the bed. This room was obviously much narrower than the room next door. After lying down for a while, he sat up. As if disturbed by the snoring next door, he stood up and walked to the small courtyard surrounded by bamboo fences with a blanket draped over him. The child had gone to the latrine and was about to return to his room when he caught a glimpse of 2 people standing in the courtyard. He was so startled that he was about to cry out, but he saw the taller person flicking a stone at him. In an instant, the child was rooted to the spot, unable to speak. The 2 people then walked towards him. Under the dim light of the lanterns outside, the faces of the 2 people could be seen clearly. One of them was petite and wore the clothes of a manservant, but it could still be seen that she was a woman. She wore a cloak that was so large that it almost didn't fit her body. She also wore a scarf that covered her face. Except for her eyes, everything below her nose was covered. But it made her eyes even more clear, making one think that if the veil was removed, she would also be a beauty. As for the person next to this petite figure, the boy was almost dumbfounded. This person was extremely tall and straight, and wore a beautiful purple robe embroidered with golden cloud patterns. This robe was a little loose, and the belt was black, which made his robe flutter even more. His appearance was even more handsome and beautiful, and when his peach blossom eyes looked over in the night, it felt as if the snow in winter had also bloomed into spring flowers. Could it be that he was an immortal that came down from the heavens? Otherwise, why would his every move be so elegant and beautiful that one could not take their eyes off him? The petite person rolled her eyes at the purple-robed man, and then asked softly, "What is your name?" The child felt his throat loosen, coughed twice, and suddenly found that he could speak again. The person's voice was that of a woman, very gentle, and the child's mood gradually became less fearful. He nervously said, "I'm Huai Sheng." "Huai Sheng?" The female asked, "Is your mother's name Chang Zaiqing?" Huai Sheng was stunned, and then his eyes turned red. He carefully looked at the woman and asked, "Do you know my mother? Do you know where my mother is? I haven't seen her for a long time. They said she wouldn't come back. Someone brought us here, saying that we could see Mother, but Mother is not here." Shen Miao sighed in her heart. This child was about the same age as Su Minglang 2 years ago, but at that time Su Minglang was a naive glutinous rice ball and this child was much more pitiful. When Chang Zhaoqing abandoned her husband and son, it was because her husband drank and gambled all day and could no longer live. But before she left, she did not think about how hard it would be for her young son to live with such an irresponsible father. Thus Chang Zhaoqing was not worthy of sympathy nor was she worthy of forgiveness, because a mother who was this cruel was not worthy to be called a mother. "Do not be afraid." Shen Miao took out a handkerchief and wiped the child's tears. Huai Sheng was somewhat overwhelmed by the favor. This female's eyes were very beautiful and one thought that her looks were not bad. Even though she was wearing a manservant's clothes, her pair of hands were fair and tender. Huai Sheng knew that this kind of hands were different from their hands that were full of calluses. One look and one could tell that she came from a wealthy family. This female must be very wealthy, and for such a noble person to wipe the tears of a lowly commoner like him. Even his own mother did not treat him so gently. Huai Sheng was somewhat in a daze looking at it. A light cough sounded, and it was the purple-robed male who was standing beside Shen Miao. He glanced at Huai Sheng and coldly said, "Go in." Huai Sheng's entire body turned cold from that glance. He did not know why, but this extremely beautiful male did not do anything and just gave him a faint glance, but it would also make one feel scared. He regained his senses with a quiver and saw the female in front taking back her handkerchief with a gentle gaze. Shen Miao was only thinking of her own Fu Ming and Wan Yu. Fu Ming and Wan Yu had a father like Fu Xiuyi, so how was it not hard? Even though she did not escape, she was also powerless to change the ending of her children, and was no better than Song Zaiqing. Suppressing the complex emotions in her heart, she said, "Huai Sheng, bring us to see your father." Chapter 662. Huai Sheng opened the door to the room, and upon entering, there was a strong smell of alcohol. Shen Miao could not help but frown even though she was wearing a veil. Seeing Shen Miao frowning, Huai Sheng seemed to be somewhat embarrassed. He jogged over and took out a diesel lamp from the other side and found a match to light it up. The light flickered as it lit up the room a little brighter. One saw a middle-aged man lying on the bed. This man was very thin and weak, and even his skin was waxy yellow. At the moment he was snoring, Huai Sheng looked anxiously at the two people in front of him, and the female said, "Wake him up." Huai Sheng nodded his head and walked to the man's side before gently shaking the man's arm and softly said, "Father, father, someone is coming." That man did not have any reaction at first and seemed to be annoyed by Huai Sheng's shaking. He subconsciously gave a slap and scolded, "Why are you howling in the middle of the night?" Huai Sheng instinctively closed his eyes, but before that slap landed, he carefully opened his eyes and saw his father's fearful gaze. He followed his father's gaze and looked over. That beautiful youth who had been looking coldly and indifferently had unknowingly arrived in front of him, and his slender hand was strangling the man's throat. "Immortal, immortal!" Huai Sheng panicked and was both afraid and worried, but at the end he resisted the fear and said, "My father did not mean to offend you. I beg you to spare his life." Shen Miao swept a glance at the man who was so scared that he instantly lost all his sleepiness before speaking calmly, "Let him go." Xie Jingxing then released his hand. Huai Sheng was somewhat afraid. His father knelt on the ground and looked at the two people in front of him. His body could not stop trembling, and most likely he instinctively felt the dangerous atmosphere of the other party, especially that beautiful-looking man. Shen Miao opened her mouth. "You are Tianli?" Tianli nodded his head and said, "This one is." Shen Miao swept a glance at Tianli. It was rumored that in the Lu province, Tianli was also a handsome scholar and overflowing with talent, thus he was able to capture Song Zaiqing's heart, and the two of them became husband and wife. It was just that after failing in the imperial examinations, she gradually developed a sense of self-loathing and simply loitered around the gambling dens and restaurants, drinking and gambling. Song Zaiqing hated these kind of days, thus she left home. Looking at Tianli's appearance, one could slightly understand why Song Zaiqing would leave home. Tianli no longer had any of the elegant demeanor he once had. The person in front of him was clearly a frustrated and downtrodden man. "Song Zaiqing is your wife?" Shen Miao asked. Hearing that, Tianli's body trembled and he raised his head to look at Shen Miao. Even if he tried his best to conceal it, Shen Miao could still see the anger and humiliation in his eyes. "No need to worry. I am not Song Zaiqing's friend, so if you have any thoughts, just say it," Shen Miao said. Tianli looked at Shen Miao seriously, as if he was confirming if what Shen Miao said was true or not. Shen Miao looked face to face with him, and after a long while, Tianli then spat on the ground. "That cheap woman ran away with my money. Shameless." Huai Sheng shrank a little and there was some sadness in his eyes. Shen Miao's gaze landed on Huai Sheng and said, "Huai Sheng, go to the courtyard. I have some words to speak with your father." Huai Sheng looked at Shen Miao and then looked at Tianli. In the end, he did not say anything and silently took a blanket and went out. After Huai Sheng went out, Shen Miao then let Tianli clearly explain the ins and outs of the matter. It was similar to what the people that Shen Miao sent to inquire about. Song Ziqing's husband was originally Tianli. When Tianli and Song Ziqing got married, it was considered a much-told story. Song Ziqing was a talented female in the Lu province, and Tianli was also a talented scholar. Tianli's family also had a few shops, and even though it was not considered as a wealthy family, it could be considered as a small wealthy family. Chapter 663. It was just that later on the Tian family's business was challenged by others and their shops were mortgaged. The Tian family's husband and wife could not take the blow and passed away one after another. Tianli was also affected by this and failed in the imperial examinations that year. At that time, Song Ziqing was already pregnant and gave birth to Huai Xing, thus there were more places that needed money. The poor couple had 100 sorrows and both of them quarreled incessantly. Tianli loved to drink and gamble, and Song Ziqing despised that this was not the life she wanted to live. Thus one day she sold the last remaining land deed in the house for money and ran away. Tianli also let people search, but no one could find Song Ziqing's whereabouts. Thinking about it, Tianli did not know about the friendship between Chang Hu and old General Shen, thus he did not know that Song Ziqing came to the Ding capital. Tianli was still gnashing his teeth when he talked about Song Ziqing, this poisonous woman. That land deed was left for Huai Xing to marry when he grows up, but she even wanted to sell it away. She does not even have Huai Xing in her heart. She is just a slut. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down. Xie Jingxing was standing at the other side and looking out of the window, as if he did not have any interest in Tianli's words. However, he was just casually standing there and one was unable to ignore that chilling aura. At the end, Tianli asked, "Someone said that by bringing both of us here, one would be able to see that woman. This young lady, the person who brought us to the Ding capital. Is it you?" Tianli could tell with one glance that the identity of these two people in front of him was not ordinary, especially that male. How would an ordinary person have such an attitude? Moreover, to break into a private residence in the middle of the night and be so arrogant, ordinary people would not have this kind of guts. "It is me," Shen Miao said. "I know where Song Ziqing is." Tianli was startled for a moment, and when he opened his mouth again, his voice was somewhat trembling as he asked, "She? Where is she?" Shen Miao frowned slightly. In Tianli's voice, other than anger, there was a trace of longing. Perhaps it was because Song Ziqing had been a married couple with him for many years, or perhaps it was because Song Ziqing was after all Huai Xing's mother, but this Tianli was not as powerful as what he said and had a little softness towards Song Ziqing. This was not something that Shen Miao was happy to see. She said, "Chang Ziqing is currently in the formidable great General Shen residence in the Ding capital and has become the concubine of the third master of the Shen residence, Shenwan. Now she is pregnant and Shenwan treats her very well and dotes on her. One think that not long later she will give birth to Shenwan's son. There are no other children in Shenwan residence, and once the child is born, perhaps Chang Ziqing will be promoted to the official position. Even if she is not, that child will live a life of luxury and glory." Tianli's expression became extremely interesting. It was like the anger of being cuckolded, humiliation and unwillingness, all mixed together in a complicated mess. That little bit of softness in his heart also vanished after Shen Miao's words. The children that Chang Ziqing gave birth to would be able to live a life of luxury, but looking at Huai Xing, even the title deed for his future wife was sold and nothing was left. Many years later, the two children that crawled out from Chang Ziqing's womb would have thousands of different lives, like clouds and mud. What people were most afraid of was comparison, and Tianli's heart would not be reconciled no matter what. Shen Miao smiled gently. Not only that, Third Master Shen even divorced his wife for Song Ziqing and went against his wife in court. One think that he really dotes on Song Ziqing. Now the original third Shen foreign has become a rat that everyone wants to beat up. It is really pitiful. Tianli sneered, this third Master Shen also has no brains. Towards Shenwan, Tianli did not have any good impression, as the hatred of stealing one's wife was absolutely irreconcilable. Moreover, as a poor person, one would always have enmity towards the rich and powerful. Especially when Song Zai-ching often showed that she yearned for wealth in front of Tian Li was even more resentful towards Shen Wan. Chapter 664. To tell the truth, I was entrusted by Third Shen Furen. Shen Miao said, Third Shen Furen was forced by Third Shen Master and Song Zai-ching to a dead end, but now there is no way at all. Third Shen Furen is planning to put up a life and death struggle, and to make Third Shen Master and Song Zai-ching uncomfortable, thus she found you. Tian Li looked at Shen Miao and gradually realized something in his heart. Noble person's meaning is, explain to Third Shen Master at an appropriate time that Song Zai-ching is your wife. Let Third Shen Master end this mistake as soon as possible. Tian Li said, Shen Miao did not give Tian Li any time to hesitate and said, could it be that you are willing to see your wife grow old together with others? You still have feelings for her and want to let her live? Did she even consider half a bit for you? If she still has a conscience in her heart, not to mention yourself, she would be reluctant to part with Huai Sheng. But the truth is that she would even take away the last bit of savings that she left for Huai Sheng. Song Zai-ching only has herself in her heart and she never put you father and son in her heart? Encountering such injustice and still want to repay evil with good. Tian Li, could it be that your Tian family are all disciples of Bodhisattva and are all merciful and indiscriminate? These words were very impolite and the corner of Xie Jingxing's lips rose slightly when he heard it, and he looked at Shen Miao meaningfully. Tian Li's face flushed red when he heard it, but he did not dare and could not refute Shen Miao's words. The most important thing is why should Huai Sheng live in such hardships and hardship, but Song Zai-ching and Shen Wan's son can be free and unfettered. If one day Huai Sheng met this younger brother of a different father, at that time the younger brother would be a person and Huai Sheng would only be able to serve him like a servant. Song Zai-ching would only recognize the younger brother and not him, so what would Huai Sheng think? Tian Li, think about it carefully. Are you really willing? Shen Miao's words always carried a hint of bewitchment, making one unconsciously think along with her words. And what she said was obviously what Tian Li was most concerned about. No matter how bad Tian Li was, and even if he was very rude to Huai Sheng, he still had a little more conscience than Song Zai-ching, else he would not be a gambling addict, but still left the last piece of land for Huai Sheng to marry. Huai Sheng said, Benefactor, I know that I am unwilling, but she is Huai Sheng's mother after all. I just want to get her back. If she is beaten to death, Huai Sheng will also be sad. Do not let Huai Sheng know of this matter. Shen Miao said, after the matter is done, Third Shen Furen will pay you father and son a large sum of money. This amount of silver is much more than the original title deed. With this amount of silver, you can run as far as you want. Start a new life in a place where no one knows you. Without Song Zai-ching, Huai Sheng still has you as his father. Treat Huai Sheng well and Huai Sheng might not be worse off than now. There were two things in this world that could not be held back: the water that had been spilled and the people that had walked out. Song Zai-ching had taken the initiative to walk out of your life, and now she is living a good life, so how are you going to chase her back? Because of your sincerity, or because of Huai Sheng and her mother's concern? Do you think that this is possible? Tian Li painfully closed his eyes. What Shen Miao said was not wrong. Song Zai-ching was living so well now, and there was really no reason to go back to that unbearable life. If she really cared about him and cared about the mother-son relationship with Huai Sheng, then she would not have sold the title deed and escaped. The female wearing a veil in front was still speaking calmly. Every person for themselves, the heavens and earth will destroy them. She was heartless first, so why do you need to talk about righteousness? Right now there is a chance to change your life. If you miss it once, there would not be a second time. No matter if you are stepping on Song Zai-ching's life to move forward, you are not wrong. Because this is what Song Zai-ching owes you father and son. Will you do it or not? Chapter 665. Following Shen Miao's words, many things flashed past Tian Li's eyes. Chang Zai-ching's disgusted eyes, the neighbors pointing at him after he escaped, Huai Sheng always sitting alone in the corner, not knowing what he was thinking, and forever wearing tattered clothes. If one day he could change his life, and be like those well-off rich families to give Huai Sheng a good life. Tianli suddenly raised his head and in an instant made up his mind. Do. I promise to listen to all your instructions, but you must give me enough money so that both of us, father and son, can leave this place without worrying about food and clothing. Shin Miao raised her eyebrows. Sometimes rumors were not credible and it was said that Tianli was like a scoundrel. One did not think that it would be so simple today. Tianli was not difficult to deal with, perhaps it was because of Huai Sheng. Even though this man did not have any ability and his temperament was not good, but at the end he still had a conscience. The money will be given to you. The one who spoke was Xie Jingxing. He stood in the shadows and leaned against the door as he spoke lazily. Do not have any other ideas, otherwise. Tianli suddenly trembled and quickly lowered his head as he spoke in fear. This lowly one does not dare. One did not know why, but when facing this man, it made him feel an indescribable fear. Even from the beginning till now, the one who spoke was a masked female, but the purple-clad male's aura was pervasive in the narrow room. Shin Miao glanced at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was rather useful. If one were to threaten someone, there was no need to say any harsh words and just directly bring Xie Jingxing over to that side and the other party would wilt first. When Xie Jingxing and Shin Miao both left the room, Huai Xing came over and looked at Shin Miao before asking timidly, "Are you able to find mother?" Shin Miao looked at Huai Sheng and said, "Sleep early." She then took the lead and walked out. Her steps were after all a little hurried and Xie Jingxing followed. After leaving the alley in the east of the city, they reached the streets outside. Xie Jingxing glanced at Shin Miao's expression and said, "You feel sorry for that child? One must continue to do apologies." Shin Miao said, "I am also a selfish person. You did not do anything wrong." Xie Jingxing casually said, "You are not a disciple of Bodhisattva." He used the words that Shin Miao said to Tianli just now to comfort Shin Miao. Shin Miao looked at him and said, "You are." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" "You accompanied me out in the middle of the night and helped me threaten Tianli to prevent future troubles. You are a disciple of Bodhisattva. Otherwise, why would you be so kind?" Xie Jingxing chuckled, "You don't seem to appreciate it at all." Shin Miao's lips slowly curled up. His relationship with Xie Jingxing had unknowingly gradually changed. There was no need to be tit for tat as the other party was very intelligent and was even more magnanimous. It seemed that there were many things that he did not have to do alone, which made it easier for him. For example, at this very moment, on the deserted snowy street, they walked side by side as if they were taking a stroll. She seemed to still be that Empress Shen in her bones, but also seemed to have something that she did not have in the past. "Song Zai Qing's matter, do you need my help?" Xie Jingxing said lazily, "If you beg me, I can consider it." "Then there is no need for your Highness Prince Rui to worry." Shen Miao smiled, "Lest there be any side issues." "You have a good idea again?" Xie Jingxing glanced at her and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Sometimes feel that when would there be a difficult problem that you are unable to solve, perhaps you will also beg me." "Most likely there is no such thing," Shin Miao answered. Chapter 666. Regret. Xie Jingxing's words were filled with regret. Shin Miao smiled. There were new things happening in the Ding capital every day, but the new things that happened every day would quickly cover up the new things that happened a few days ago. For example, the lawsuit between the Shen and Qin family a few days ago. Everyone treated it as a joke and after seeing it, they would forget about it. As for the Shen residents, it was the same. The servants still did what they needed to do, and the only difference was that Qiu Shui Yuan had changed to a new master and the new master had gained Shen Wan's favor, almost catching up to third Shen Furen who had just entered the household. Compared to Chen Rouqiu, Song Zai Qing was better at building relationships with the surrounding people. Most likely it was because she did not have Chen Rouqiu's air of self-righteousness. She was hardy and delicate and the way she treated others made others feel comfortable. Not only did Shen Wan like her, even Shen Gui and old Shen Furen also felt that she was not bad and felt that it was a wise decision for Shen Wan to divorce Chen Rouqiu. Shen Wan treated Song Zai Qing well and old Shen Furen specially found an eminent monk to take a look, saying that the child in Song Zai Qing's stomach was definitely a male. Old Shen Furen's last bit of nitpicking towards Song Zaiqing's birth was gone. The most urgent matter in the Shen residence was to quickly add a male child, otherwise outsiders would laugh at the Shen residence for having no descendants. Shenwan was always smiling every day. Song Zaiqing gave him advice and was able to properly manage the matters in the residence, as if she was very familiar with it. He was happy to be relaxed. To be able to write poetry and also manage the family business, there was no male that would not like such a virtuous wife. On this day, Song Zaiqing and Shenwan were talking in the courtyard. Song Zaiqing was wrapped in a thick fur coat and there was a brazier by her feet and a heater in her hands. Because he was afraid that she would catch a cold, Shenwan let the surrounding maids do their best to serve her. Song Zaiqing said, "Master is somewhat free today." Shenwan pulled her hand to his and smiled, "Not only today. These days there are no matters in court and one can accompany you and the child more." "That is really good." Song Zaiqing smiled, "The child can also get closer to father." These words made Shenwan extremely happy. He hugged Song Zaiqing in his embrace and sighed, "Now what I hope in my heart is nothing more than for you to give birth to a child, then all these things that I have done would not be in vain." Chen Roqiu seemed to have understood something and seeing that Shenwan's brows did not relax, she asked, "Is Master still worried about 5th Shen young lady's matter a few days ago? To let Shen Miao marry to Prince Zhou, or to let Shen Miao and Prince Zhou have a relationship, no matter which one it was, until now there was no news at all." It seemed that things weren't going well. Even though Song Zaiqing did not know why Shenwan wanted so much, she knew that this matter was definitely related to Shenwan's career. Shenwan smiled bitterly and shook his head. These days Shen Exen has been watching Shen Miao very well and Shen Miao did not even leave the residence, thus one could not find an opportunity. It's like an iron bucket, it's hard to make a move. As he spoke, he seemed to be disappointed. This can't go on. Song Zaiqing's eyes turned and smiled. What is so difficult about this? If 5th Shen young lady does not go out, then let 5th Shen young lady take the initiative to go out. To tell the truth, if 5th Shen young lady were to go out, General Shen would inevitably let her bring a group of guards. General Shen is after all from the military and the people around him are all experts. If one really wanted to make a move, one might not succeed in one shot. It is better to let 5th Shen young lady take the initiative to go out and moreover sneak out so that General Shen would not find out. This way it would be much easier. Shenwan's eyes flashed and after thinking for a moment, he still shook his head. Shen Miao usually does not have any secrets so it would be difficult to coax her out. Even Shen Miao had a good relationship with a young lady called Feng and Ning, and these days she was staying in the Feng residence and if Shen Miao were to come out in Feng and Ning's name, Shen Miao would definitely be alert. Chapter 667. Young lady, no matter how calm she usually is, she is still timid and there will be repercussions in her heart. Song Zaiqing however smiled gently. Master might as well take an unconventional approach, for example using 5th Shen young lady's parents or older brother as a raft and say that they are in danger or something. One would be flustered and no matter how calm 5th Shen young lady usually is, when it concerns one's own blood relatives, one think that one would panic. Master might as well make use of this opportunity. When Shenwan heard that, he first thought about it carefully before holding Song Zaiqing's hands tightly. Even though there are some loopholes, it is still a good idea. Once it is perfected in detail, perhaps it could really be put to use. He looked at Song Zaiqing with some excitement and did not hide the appreciation in his eyes. "You always give me surprises." Song Zaiqing lowered her head slightly and smiled. "Master is really joking. Now that one is following Master, one would do one's best to think for Master. Even though this matter is not open and above board, but Zaiqing also know that there is no father and son in court and Zaiqing would put Master first. Actually the matter of scheming against Shen Miao was considered a vicious plan if it was set out. Even though Shenwan was very appreciative of Song Zaiqing's ingenious plan for him, but in the future when he thought about it, he would inevitably feel that Song Zaiqing was ruthless. Song Zaiqing took the lead to say it out herself. First she said that there was no father and son in court and then she put Shenwan first in everything. Not only did it not make Shenwan feel bad, it made Shenwan appreciate Song Zaiqing even more. He felt that she was broad-minded and it was rare for her to think of him wholeheartedly. She was a rare female. Therefore Shenwan looked at Song Ziqing affectionately. With such a beauty, what more can one ask for? Song Ziqing also meekly said, "It is Ziqing's fortune to meet Master." Ziqing dare not forget Master's good treatment of Ziqing. The lower she sat, the more Shenwan doted on her, but did not see the flash of pride in Song Ziqing's eyes. In Song Ziqing's eyes, any man or any feelings were just passing clouds. Only those who had truly experienced poverty would know the value of wealth. She wanted to hold on to Shenwan tightly, not because of Shenwan himself, but because Shenwan could bring her a life without worrying about food and clothing. Chang Zhaoqing was different from Qin Roqiu. Qin Roqiu still loved Shenwan in her heart, so Qin Roqiu would lose her mind because of Shenwan's actions. What Song Ziqing loved was the wealth of the Shen residents and the identity of an official's foreign, thus she was more clear-headed about what she had to do. For a man like Shenwan and a person like Qin Roqiu who was an exquisite person, it was inevitable that they would end up like this. Song Ziqing knew in her heart that just by relying on poetry and songs, it was not enough to capture this man's heart. She had to display her talents and make Shenwan feel that she was useful to him. Only then would Shenwan never give up on her. Song Ziqing did very well. Shenwan accompanied Chang Zhaoqing for a while before he got up and left. He still had some official business to attend to, so he seriously instructed Chang Zhaoqing's servants before leaving with his servants. When he returned to his study, his personal manservant slowly walked over with a letter and said, "Master, the gatekeeper said that someone handed a letter to you, but I don't know who sent it." Shenwan took the letter and saw that the top of the envelope was also empty. It was obvious that the sender was afraid that others would notice the signature. As officials in court, they would occasionally have some confidential letters. Thus Shenwan did not dare to delay and quickly opened the letter. The first line of words that opened the letter made Shenwan's entire person freeze on the spot. That line of words said, "Third Shen Master, do you know that your favored concubine is a used shoe?" Shenwan almost lost his balance. He supported himself with one hand on the table and calmed himself down. Only then did he quickly continue to read the letter. The letter was written very simply, but the contents of the letter were not simple at all. That letter said that Song Ziqing had already married before in the Lu province and had a son. Now that she was in the Shen residence and had become Shenwan's concubine, the most important thing was that at this time, Song Ziqing had not separated from her original husband. If it was more serious, Shenwan could even say that he had seized another's wife and could be sued in court. Shenwan originally did not believe it and looked at the letter with some disdain. He even thought that this letter would be the evidence of Qin Roqiu's provocation. But when he saw the last line of words, his body trembled and he suddenly froze. Song Ziqing's private place had a small red mole. This was an ironclad fact. Chapter 668. A normal person would not be able to see the little red mole on Song Ziqing's private parts. But what kind of person was Shenwan? If he would easily believe this sentence without any evidence, then he would not be an official who had been in the court for so many years. He swept a glance at the letter and it said that this father and son pair had already entered the Ding capital and were staying in a private residence in the eastern part of the city. There was even a specific address at the top. Shenwan quickly tore the letter into shreds and said to the servant beside him, "Prepare the carriage." Shenwan did not believe a strange letter, but he was unable to trust Song Ziqing without reservation. It would be better to see it with his own eyes. When the horse carriage reached the residence in the eastern part of the city, Shenwan did not get off the carriage himself but hid inside and let his servant knock on the door. The one who opened the door was an 8 or 9-year-old boy. Because this boy's figure was too thin and weak, his gaze lacked the innocence of a child and was more mature, looking like a youth. When Shenwan saw that boy's face clearly, he sucked in a breath of cold air. In that instant, Shenwan knew that the words in the letter were true. There was no other reason but that this boy was just too similar to Song Ziqing. Even the charm between the brows was extremely similar, but compared to Song Ziqing's open and candid appearance, this boy appeared to be much more inferior and timid. But no matter what, the appearance was 100% similar. The Song family did not have any other heirs, thus it was impossible for him to beat Song Ziqing's younger brother. Shenwan's personal servant jumped in shock from this boy's appearance, but still followed Shenwan's instructions and asked, "Little brother, do you know where Song Ziqing is?" That boy looked at him warily and asked, "Why are you looking for my mother?" Shenwan closed his eyes. There was no doubt that what the letter said was the truth. Song Ziqing indeed had a husband and son in the Lu province. One just did not know why it was so well concealed. The servant said a few perfunctory words to that boy and returned to Shenwan's side to report. He carefully looked at Shenwan and asked, "Master, investigate." Shenwan panted, "Send people to the Lu province to investigate. You must investigate clearly what kind of background Song Ziqing has." The reason why Shenwan appreciated Song Ziqing was because Song Ziqing was gentle, frank, and talented. Moreover, she was currently pregnant with his child. But if Shui Song Ziqing really had a husband and son in Lu province, then all of this would become a joke. He was still complacent about raising other people's wife, but since Song Ziqing had abandoned her husband and son, she was definitely not as gentle as she looked on the surface. Shenwan was also very picky in certain aspects. On one hand, he hoped that his wife could take care of worldly affairs in an orderly manner. On the other hand, he hoped that she could maintain the aura of an otherworldly fairy. And everything that happened today made Song Ziqing instantly change into another person in his eyes, making Shenwan feel extremely disgusted. In the next few days, Shenwan seemed to be very busy. Every day he would be outside, and even when he returned to the Shen residence, he would head into the study so Song Ziqing was not able to see him. Occasionally, she would come over to deliver pastries to Shenwan, but Shenwan's behavior was not as intimate as before. Initially, Shenwan's attitude made Song Ziqing somewhat uneasy, but Shenwan's personal servant told Song Ziqing that Shenwan had taken up an errand these few days. He was very busy, thus he had no time to care about other things. Song Ziqing then felt relieved. However, the truth was that Shenwan finally received a letter from the Lu province. In the letter that was sent back from the Lu province, it was indeed no different from the letter that was sent by the stranger. Song Ziqing originally had a husband, and it was considered a story of a generation in the Lu province. After Shenwan finished reading the letter, he was so angry that he almost flipped the table. He had taken in a noble concubine, and it was someone else's wife. And now that the other party's husband and son had found their way to the Ding capital, once it was discovered, one feared that he would become a joke in the entire Ding capital. Moreover, those imperial censors would not let go of this opportunity to censure him. Chapter 669. If it was only like this, then it was all right, but it was because of Song Ziqing that he divorced Qin Roqiu and even formed a feud with the Qin family. Now if this was spread out, others would say that he mistook the fish's eyes for pearls. Shenwan's heart was already faintly regretting it. Song Ziqing's belly had his child, but he was afraid that his career would be ruined because of Song Ziqing. In terms of feelings and power, he still had to value power. Not to mention that the woman who was sleeping beside him was someone else's wife. Shenwan was unable to let it go. His eyes were deep in thought for a while, and just as he was about to give instructions, he saw one of his attendants rushing in and shouting, "Master, something has happened. Not good." Shenwan frowned and said angrily, "What is the propriety of being so flustered?" That attendant was trembling as he handed a letter to Shenwan. One did not know why, but his eyes were somewhat evasive. Shenwan looked suspiciously at the attendant. This attendant was the person who followed him and usually followed him to pass messages to his colleagues. After looking at 2 lines, Shenwan's face suddenly turned green, and if one looked carefully, one would be able to detect some fear. In the imperial study, Emperor Wenhui was in a rage. Emperor Wenhui sneered as he threw the memorial in his hands onto the ground. The eunuchs beside him did not dare to breathe loudly. When the emperor was angry, there would be millions of corpses. Especially at this moment, one dared not touch Emperor Wenhui's bad luck. The first item on the memorial was a list of things that Shenwan had done from a few years ago until now. It didn't seem to be a big deal. But Emperor Wenhui was after all a person who had walked out of the bloody storm that his brothers fought for power. The memorial was written very cleverly, but every line described the unusual relationship between Shen Wan and Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi. Among the 9 sons of Emperor Wenhui, the one he was most assured about was the Crown Prince and Prince Ding. The Crown Prince was after all born of an orthodox lineage and his body was weak, thus Emperor Wenhui would subconsciously be more relaxed with him. Even though Prince Ding was outstanding, he did not care about the matters of the court, and in addition Consort Dong Shu had a temperament that did not fight or snatch. This made Emperor Wenhui feel extremely comfortable. Emperor Wenhui could see the open and secret fights between the various princes but would not say anything to stop it. As long as they didn't go overboard, he would be happy to see such a situation of mutual checks and balances. Once one touches power, one would not be willing to let it go. Seeing his sons grow up one by one and reaching the age of dragons and tigers, Emperor Wenhui would also be wary. What he hated the most was that the princes and the ministers were too close to each other. Although this was an unavoidable fact, for example, his 9 sons each had a group of supporters. But when this son became the Prince Ding who did not fight or snatch, Emperor Wenhui was somewhat unable to accept it. On the contrary, he was even angrier than before. In the past, Fu Xiuyi showed that he did as he pleased and did not care about worldly affairs, but now in Emperor Wenhui's eyes, there was only one word: act. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Emperor Wenhui's face was gloomy. Each and every one of them think that Zhen is easy to fool. Since it is like this, Zhen will fulfill their wish. The matters of the imperial court had always changed in an instant. There were many who went to the emperor's hall in the morning and became a farmer in the evening. If they committed a crime and became Tian Shirang, then their luck was pretty good. Most of them ended up in prison, and a knife slit their throats, implicating their entire family. Shen Wan was such a person. After the fight between the Shen and Shen family a few days ago, one thought that things had gradually calmed down. Who knew that a group of officials suddenly came to the Shen residence to arrest people? Some curious commoners inquired and heard that it was Shen Wan who did not do his job well in court and implicated the entire Shen residence. The specific charges were not clear and the commoners were easy to coax as they believed that he did not do his job well. But there were smart people who could see that the matter was unusual. One knew that if the task was not done well, then why would the entire Shen residence be destroyed? This was clearly a serious crime that required the execution of the entire family. Chapter 670. The commoners who were passing by looked at the Shen residence that was no longer the same as before and started to point fingers. As they spoke, they started to talk about the formidable great general Shen Exin. They said that 2 years ago the Shen family wanted to separate from the family when Shen Exin was in dire straits, and afterwards Shen Xian's name was removed from the Shen family. One did not think that Shen Exin was able to obtain a blessing in disguise and escaped a calamity. When these words reached Shen Miao's ears in the Shen mansion, Shen Miao only smiled without a care. Luo Tan clenched her fists and had an angry expression. This is called retribution, but the time has not yet arrived. In the beginning they humiliated eldest Bo and auntie, and if they knew that only you all are fine, one fear that they would be angry. Luo Ling pondered for a moment before shaking his head. What crime did third Shen master commit that there would be such fanfare? Shen Miao said, since His Majesty is so angry, one must have done something to behave atrociously on the Tai Sui's head. These matters have nothing to do with us. Luo Tan nodded her head. Indeed. Then let us wait and watch the show. Shen Qiu looked at Shen Miao with a worried expression and hesitated to speak. After Luo Ling and Luo Tan left, Shen Qiu did not leave and pulled Shen Miao into the room. After seeing that the door was locked, he then asked Shen Miao, "Younger sister, was it you who did the Shen family's matters?" Shen Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Eldest brother, why do you push everything onto my head? If His Majesty wants to punish those who did not do their job well, I do not have the ability to intervene in third Shu's matters." Shen Qiu pressed his forehead with some headache and said, "Younger sister, eldest brother knows that there are some things that you are not willing to say to outsiders. But the matters of the court are not as simple as you think. Sometimes it seems that you have one, but perhaps in the future there would be variables and one would be implicated. He rambled on for a while and Shen Miao was helpless. Eldest brother, to tell you the truth, this matter indeed has nothing to do with me. Shen Wan was imprisoned because Chen Rouqiu stabbed him in the back. At that time Chen Rouqiu and Shen Wan quarreled to the death. Do you think that Chen Rouqiu would leave it at that? This time it was Shen Qiu's turn to be surprised. Chen Rouqiu? After all, Chen Rouqiu had lived with Shen Wan for so many years and knew Shen Miao's matters like the palm of her hand. If you really want to stab someone in the back, it's much easier than ordinary people. Shen Miao said. Shen Wan was harmed by the person next to him and implicated the entire residence. What does it have to do with me? When Shen Qiu heard it, he first thought about it carefully before looking suspiciously at Shen Miao. How do you know about these matters so clearly? I always look forward to them being unlucky, so naturally I sent people to monitor their every move. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing had mingled together for a long time, so there was a sense of fearlessness in her words. Shen Qiu usually saw Shen Miao with a dignified and imposing manner, and this was the first time he saw her in such a manner. He did not know why, but he felt that it was somewhat familiar. Then, he shook his head and interrupted the wild thoughts in his mind. Even if it's surveillance, it's too much of a coincidence. He widened his eyes and looked a little comical. Sister, could it be that you're adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes? Shen Miao smiled. Eldest brother, feel that it is how it is. Anyhow, these matters are not related to me at all. Shen Qiu's face collapsed as he said, How can you have such guts? If this pierced the heavens, Shen Miao interrupted his nagging, how did eldest brother become so long-winded? It is only a small matter and the Shen family only have themselves to blame for falling to such a state. If Shen Wan did not do things badly, how would he be caught by others? If he was in harmony with Chen Rouqiu, how would he be provoked successfully? One should first think about what one did wrong before saying that others are wrong. Shen Miao's words made Shen Qiu dumbfounded, and it was only until Shen Miao's maid sent him out of the courtyard that Shen Qiu reacted and slapped his head to regain his senses. Shen Miao was obviously using sophistry to pester endlessly, and one did not know where did she learn this from. It was clearly a bold move that even the emperor and the court officials were playing in the palm of her hands, but she made it sound so innocent. Shen Qiu was flabbergasted. When did Shen Miao learn to speak such self-righteous nonsense? And this posture was very familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere. Where was it? Chapter 671. In the room, Shen Miao sent Shen Qiu off and sat at the table with a sigh of relief. It was just the beginning, and Emperor Wen Hui had a swift and decisive temperament. Most likely he could not tolerate the princes and the courtiers getting too close, not to mention all these matters started a few years ago. From the very beginning, she must not forget who she wanted to deal with. Since her rebirth, many things had gradually faded away. For example, the people of the Shen family. Even if she did not do anything, she could still court her own death. But Fu Xiuyi was different. Fu Xiuyi was like the most vicious snake that was hidden in the dark. He looked harmless but would suddenly jump out and bite people. Just like the last time he asked Shen Wan to matchmake him and Prince Zhou. Even if Shen Miao tried to hide it in front of Fu Xiuyi still stared at her. It was no longer appropriate for him to endure and continue planning. He might as well tear apart the cloth covering him and start an evenly matched game of chess right now. What Fu Xiuyi was most afraid of was that his ambition would be exposed. Even though Shen Wan's matter would make Emperor Wen Hui suspicious, but with Fu Xiuyi's means he would not be defeated so easily. He would definitely come up with a rebuttal. But how could Shen Miao miss this opportunity? Even if one could not defeat him this time, one must make Fu Xiuyi shed a layer of skin. Just one Shen Wan was not enough. This chess game had to be more exciting. Shen Miao let Jingzhe call Mo Qing in from outside and whispered a few words to Mo Qing. From the luxurious mansion to the prison, it was only a matter of one night. Shen Wan felt that in these 2 years, the Shen residence was very unlucky. It was as if he had collided with something, and everything was going wrong. Originally, it was the second branch that was in trouble. After the second branch, it was the third branch's turn. Now all the people in the Shen residence were in jail, except for the first household. Now that the first household had been reactivated by Emperor Wen Hui, No matter what would happen in the future, at least at present they were more glorious than them. Speaking of which, the Shin residents continuously bumped into bad luck, just like after the separation of the first household, or more accurately, it started from Shin Xion's return to the capital 2 years ago. Could it be that someone had secretly placed a curse on the Shin residents? In the cell next door, the Shin family's womenfolk were locked up, and old Shin Furin and Chang Ziqing were locked together. When Shin Wan heard old Shin Furin's complaints and moans, his heart started to feel irritated. Thinking back to 2 years ago, the number of people that came to visit the formidable great general's Shin residence could be found everywhere, even though they were all here for Shin Xion's name. But Shin Xion was not in the capital all year round, and the Shin residence was not short of money, so who would not say that they were imposing when they went out? Although Shin Gui and himself were both civil officials, they were still climbing the ranks year after year. His 2 daughters were slender and elegant, and they could be of help if they found a good marriage partner. Shin Yuan Bo and Shin Yuan were still healthy, and Ren Wan Yun was astute, and Shin Rochio was gentle, and it was a good scene of a harmonious family. However, in just a short 2 years, things had changed, and he had actually fallen to such a state. With a sickly voice, Shin Gui asked, "Sandy, what crime have you actually committed? His Majesty is actually going to arrest our entire residence? I did something wrong?" Shen Wan sneered. Second older brother is also someone who had served in the court before. One do not know if His Majesty has the heart to arrest anyone, and just casually make up a reason to arrest them? This is the reason for His Majesty to pinch me. If it was really a bad job, one would definitely not arrest everyone in the residence. This clearly meant that one was going to send a punitive expedition against them. When Chang Ziqing, who was next door, heard it, she exclaimed, and there was some anxiety in her words, "Is it His Majesty's intention? Why would His Majesty deliberately do this? Could it be that Master had angered His Majesty in some way?" Chapter 672. If it was normal times, Xinwan would definitely comfort Song Ziqing with a few words. But when she thought of the news that she received from the Lu province that Chang Ziqing actually had a husband and son, she felt disgusted. Now seeing Chang Ziqing's interaction, one did not know what kind of mentality it came from, but Xinwan's heart was somewhat pleased. Chang Ziqing had been wholeheartedly rushing towards a future of riches and honor, so she had concealed her true appearance. But now that all her riches and honor were gone, it was probably too late for regrets. He waved his hand and said impatiently, "I don't know." In his heart, however, he was thinking about the letter that his follower had given him. The letter that the long attendant gave was written by an official who had a close personal relationship with him. That official did not know where did he get the news that Xinwan's sworn enemy had sent a memorial, and this memorial was not written on anything else but the evidence of Xinwan and Fu Xiuyi's relationship in these few years. Even though Xinwan did not really work for Fu Xiuyi these few years, but in the early years he was indecisive and did not want to give up the chess piece of Prince Ding, thus his attitude was somewhat ambiguous. In the eyes of others, it seemed that he and Prince Ding had long formed an alliance. And when these evidence were seen by Emperor Wenhui, one could imagine how furious Emperor Wenhui was. One feared that it would be difficult for this matter to be resolved peacefully. As for why his nemesis would suddenly have that evidence, Xinwan actually had a vague guess in his heart. Chen Rochio and him had been husband and wife for so many years, and because Chen Rochio herself did not understand the court affairs, Xinwan did not deliberately guard against Chen Rochio. Some things were very private. If it was Chen Ruochio who stabbed him in the back, everything could be explained. Thinking of how Chen Rochio was originally gentle and pleasant to him, but now she had gone crazy and was in a life and death struggle, Xinwan's gaze landed on Chang Ziqing next door, and his expression gradually sank. If there was no Chang Ziqing, he and Chen Rochio would not be estranged from each other, and there would not be this situation now. Thinking like this, Xinwan was indifferent towards his flesh and blood in Chang Ziqing's womb. The matter of Xinwan's entire family being imprisoned, on the surface it was not handled well, but those who knew the inside story knew that Emperor Wenhui was furious that Xinwan was privately close to Fu Xiuyi. This matter implicated the entire Shin residence, and of course Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi, would not be able to avoid it. Fu Xiaoyi had a lot of hidden eyes in the palace and very quickly knew the whole story. Fu Xiaoyi did not think that Xin Wan and Xin Roqiu's family matters would actually involve him. Now was the crucial time, and one must not let Emperor Wen Hui be suspicious of oneself at this time. At the same time, Fu Xiaoyi was also very puzzled. This year Emperor Wen Hui's health was not as good as before, so he was more sensitive to the relationship between the princes and the courtiers. At such a sensitive time, there were rumors that he and Xin Wan were close. This timing seemed too coincidental. Although Xin Wan was the one who had cheated him, in reality, his losses were no less than Xin Wan's. The more he thought, the more stuffy he felt. Fu Xiaoyi coldly said, unable to accomplish anything and more than enough to spoil things. Pei Lang pondered, Your Highness, it would be best for you to distance yourself from this matter as soon as possible. No matter what, I have to prove my innocence. Naturally I know. Fu Xiaoyi said, what does teacher think? The evidence is irrefutable. Trying to deny it would be more deliberate. Your Highness might as well admit it and push the matter to Xin Wan alone. Even though it is taboo for His Majesty for a prince to form a clique, if Xin Wan were to take the initiative to seek shelter, Your Highness would be annoyed and perhaps Your Majesty's heart would be more broad-minded. Fu Xiaoyi nodded his head. Teacher's thoughts are exactly the same as mine. Shen Wan's chess move could only be a sacrifice. But this kind of useless person, keeping him would cause more trouble and it would be better to get rid of him earlier. These words meant that Shen Wan was going to be sacrificed. The matters in the memorials could not be denied as there was evidence for everything and anyone who had the heart to investigate would be able to find it. But if this was Shen Wan's idea alone and it was Shen Wan who wanted to climb up to Fu Xiaoyi but Fu Xiaoyi was unmoved, then all these would be excusable and Fu Xiaoyi would be the one who was implicated. Chapter 673. It was just that in this way, Shen Wan's sins would be heavier and under Emperor Wen Hui's rage, Shen Wan's punishment would be heavier. But of course Fu Xiaoyi would not care about Shen Wan's ending. Fu Xiaoyi would never give unnecessary feelings to those who were useless to him and even cause trouble. I and the Shen family are really fated. Fu Xiaoyi's expression was cold. Many times bad things were done in the hands of the Shen family. One do not know why, but this time even though it was Qin Roqiu who started it, I feel that it is not that simple, as if there is someone manipulating it from behind. Pei Lang's heart jumped but his expression was still as indifferent as before. The urgent matter is that Your Highness should first prove yourself. The longer it drags on, the more His Majesty's anger would not dissipate and one fear that it would implicate Your Highness. Fu Xiaoyi smiled. Even though it is somewhat troublesome, it is not a dead end. Does teacher think that the Shen family should be kept or not? Pei Lang replied warmly, since they obstructed Your Highness's great cause, they cannot be kept. Fu Xiaoyi smiled brightly and stared at Pei Lang. Teacher's words are exactly what I have in mind. I still have some matters so teacher can leave. I will discuss with teacher about the important matters. Pei Lang nodded his head and left after bidding farewell. But he did not see that Fu Xiaoyi was staring at Pei Lang's back and a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. The matter of Xin Wan's family being imprisoned was known by everyone and naturally it was spread to the residence of Prince Qin. In front of the stone table in the garden, Xin Yu was stunned when she heard it. It was Huang Fu Hao who looked at the spy who came to report and asked, "Oh, is it true that the entire residence is in prison?" "Absolutely true," that spy said. One heard that the emperor was very angry and wanted to sentence them to death this time. Huang Fu Hao turned his head to look at Xin Yu's expression. Shen Yu was surprised and somewhat inconceivable but she did not see any sadness. Involuntarily, the words that Qin Roqiu said to her that day surfaced in her mind. At that time Xin Yu felt that there was a hidden meaning in Qin Roqiu's words. Could it be that the outcome of the Shen family today was all because of Qin Roqiu? Shen Yu did not dare to let Huang Fu Hao sense her emotions and pretended to lower her head to reveal a sorrowful look. How could it be? Just because the task was not done well, why would Emperor Wen Hui confiscate the family? One fear that it was not because of this reason. Huang Fu Hao smiled. One fear that there is another reason. He finished speaking and looked at Xin Yu. You want to go and see Shindarin? Shin Yu jumped in shock and stammered, if one were to go now, one fear that it would make father sad and add trouble to your highness. No, no need. She was married to the Wang family, so she was not implicated in the Shun family's confiscation. But if people were to discover that Shin Yu was still here, who knew if she would be locked up as well? The Shin family was heartless towards Shin Yu, and Shin Yu also did not have any morality towards the Shin family. She was afraid of implicating herself, and it was too late to avoid it, so why would she impatiently go up? Hearing this, Huang Fu Hao didn't dwell on this issue and just smiled. Shin Yu secretly heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. After Huang Fu Hao left, Shin Yu wanted to write a letter to Qin Roqiu and ask her if this matter was related to Qin Roqiu. Even though there was some lingering fear and panic in her heart, but seeing that the entire Shin family was in prison, Shin Yu's heart had some schadenfreude. Especially Tsang Zaiqing, this woman who had occupied her mother's position, now had to suffer together with Shen Wan. Thinking like this, Shen Yu felt that she was not that lowly to be a concubine of Huang Fu Hao, and even somewhat complacent. If she were to stay in the Shen residence, the one who would be imprisoned would be her. Shen Yu thought like this, but on the second day, a secret news broke out in the Ding capital. This secret news was like a stone thrown into the bottom of the water, stirring up 1,000 waves. It made the people watching the bustle outside to find a new interesting topic to talk about and talked about it non-stop in the streets and alleys, making people talk about it with great relish. It also made the Shin family completely become a bystander's joke. Chapter 674. A shocking secret news broke out in the Ding capital. First, in the early morning before the sky brightened, there was a middle-aged man kneeling in front of the yamen and beating the drum to cry out for injustice, saying that the third master of the Shen residence, Shen Wan, had forcibly abducted a woman and made her a concubine, which was not tolerated by heaven and earth. Although the man looked like a third-rate lowly person, it was unknown where he had inherited a good tongue. It could almost be said that his tongue was like a lotus flower. Even talking and singing was very exciting, and in a short time it attracted a large group of commoners to watch the bustle. In less than half an hour, the entire Ding capital knew about this matter. Because of the heated lawsuit between the Chen and Shen family, the commoners in the Ding capital knew a lot about this legendary noble concubine, young Lady Chang Zaiqing. Shen Wan was willing to divorce his wife of many years for her, and even did it without the slightest bit of face. Everyone would speculate more. Some busybodies inquired that Tsang Zaiqing was the daughter of old General Shen's old friend. She was well-educated, gentle and elegant, and her temperament was even better than Qin Roqiu. She was even pregnant with Shen Wan's child, so naturally people's hearts would be biased towards Tsang Zaiqing. But early in the morning today, this middle-aged man brought along a youth to kneel in front of the yamen's doors and smashed the faces of those who said that Tsang Zaiqing was good. It was said that Shen Wan abducted others' wife, but everyone were not fools. The distance between the Lu province and the Ding capital was not close, and in the beginning it was Tsang Zaiqing herself who came to the Shen residence to seek shelter, and also claimed that she was not married. One feared that Tsang Zaiqing was the one who threw herself at it. Thinking about it, Shen Wan was intelligent and refined for a lifetime, but at the end he was unable to see Tsang Zaiqing's true face. After raising another's wife for such a long time, the green hat on his head could already be planted with grass. As for the words that the man said, no one doubted it at all. One reason was that the man was still holding the marriage certificate in his hands, and the white and black words and even the official seal were all in Tsang Zaiqing's name. Secondly, the young man who came along looked exactly like Chang Zhaoqing, except that he looked a little more silent and at a loss. Everyone pointed at him and discussed, taking it as a joke that was hard to come by in a few decades. It was said that there were many disputes in wealthy families, but he didn't expect the master of a wealthy family to be so muddle-headed. Originally, if it was in the past, this matter could be suppressed and it would not spread throughout the entire Ding capital so quickly. But today, this man had appeared out of the blue, beating the drum early in the morning to complain about his grievances. It was difficult to suppress it. Besides, the yamen servants also knew how to read people's expressions. Now that Shenwan's entire family was locked up in prison, who would care about Shenwan's reputation? They joined the crowd in watching the joke. In the Chen residence, in a remote courtyard, Chen Roqiu was convulsing with laughter when she heard the news that Shi Qing had inquired from outside. She had become more and more mischievous, and she had become even more slovenly. The more he behaved like this, the more he was disliked in the Chen family. But she did not care much about it, as the meaning of living was to pull down the Chen family, and there was no doubt that Chen Roqiu had done it. Chen Roqiu did it. After being Shenwan's wife for so many years, she knew something about Shenwan's life. Adding up bits and pieces, and also bribing a servant under Shenwan to send this evidence to the hands of Shenwan's nemesis. She waited uneasily for the news, and finally the good news came. The more Chen Roqiu loved Shenwan, the more she hated him. It was Shenwan who made her turn into such a sorry state, so she must not let Chang Zhaoqing and Shenwan live well. When she knew that the entire Shen family was in prison, Chen Roqiu was happy, but she did not expect that on the second day, it was actually revealed that Chang Zhaoqing had a husband and son. She did not expect that she, who had been astute for a lifetime, would actually lose to a female who abandoned her husband and son. Chen Roqiu was originally laughing crazily, but as she laughed, she felt that there was some bitterness at the corner of her mouth. If she was calmer in the beginning and not so anxious, and sent people to the Lu province to investigate, perhaps the result would not be like this. Shenwan was a person who could not tolerate sand in his eyes and knew of Chang Zhaoqing's identity. Without Chen Roqiu saying it, he would hate Chang Zhaoqing even more. Chapter 675. But there was no turning back arrow. At this step, no one could turn back anymore. Furin, what should be done now? Shi Qing asked carefully. Now that Chen Roqiu was not welcomed in the Chen family and the Shen family's matter had come to an end, to Chen Roqiu, it was not a solution to live like this in the future. I think. Chen Roqiu pressed her forehead tiredly. You already have a home, so now I can do whatever I want. After a few more days, I will leave the Ding capital to find a small place and spend the rest of my life in peace. She smiled bitterly. It is better than staying in this Ding capital and being ridiculed by everyone. Shi Qing's heart was relieved. It was better for Chen Roqiu to think like this. As long as there was hope, the future would get better and better. But I have to go and see Yue first. Chen Roqiu held her chest. Otherwise I will not be at ease. Just as she was speaking, she saw Hua Yi rushing in from outside with a panicked expression. Friend, it is not good. Something has happened. Chen Roqiu stood up and asked with a frown, What is the matter? Second young lady. Upon hearing Xinyu, Chen Roqiu's heart suddenly jumped wildly. She grabbed Hua Yi's hand and asked anxiously, What happened to Yue? Hua Yi was about to cry. The matter of second young lady in the residence of Prince Qin has been discovered. When Xinyu was brought out of the residence of Prince Qin, Huang Fu Hao did not stop her. Even when Xinyu was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, grabbing his sleeves and begging, Huang Fu Hao only comforted her. Nothing will happen. You go with them. There was not a bit of protection for Xinyu in his words. Those officials that came were smart, and when they saw Huang Fu Hao's attitude, the last bit of concern was gone. Almost rudely, they escorted Xinyu out. Huang Fu Hao looked at the group of people leaving with Xinyu and could not help but frown. He asked the guard beside him, Go and inquire about what exactly happened in the Mingqi's palace. Early in the morning, there were officials that came knocking and said that they wanted to take away the daughter of the third household of the Shen family, Xinyu. Ever since Xinyu entered the residence of Prince Qin, she had never told anyone about it. No one would have thought that the daughter of an official would become the crown prince's concubine. But now, these officials had somehow gotten the news and had come to King Qin's mansion to demand for him. At the end, Emperor Wen Hui left some leeway for Huang Fu Hao to be polite. The reason for bringing Xinyu away was because Xinyu was also a member of the Shen family, thus she could not escape from the relationship, but there was no mention of Xinyu and Shen Dongling exchanging marriage. Most likely it was to deliberately avoid this problem. But how big of a storm could a concubine stir up? Just because of this, Emperor Wen Hui did not need to make such a big fanfare. Huang Fu Hao thought that there must be something fishy about it. Since the other party came prepared, there was no need for Huang Fu Hao to go against them. To him, Xinyu was just a means to understand Shen Miao, and coincidentally there were some good looks that he could play with, thus he did not really put Xinyu in his heart. It was not worthwhile to make things ugly for Xinyu and Emperor Wenhui, thus he went with the flow. Huang Fu Hao still knew nothing about what happened in Ming Qi's palace, and because of this, there were still many things that he did not understand. After pondering for a moment, Huang Fu Hao summoned the attendant beside him and said, "Make a trip to the residence of Prince Ding and help me bring a message." These matters in the Shen family were enough to be called a pot of chaos. It was as if a thread had suddenly sprung up on a com bandage, and when the thread was pulled, the originally embroidered pattern was instantly messed up and one could not see the original appearance. Chapter 676. First it was Xin Wan who did not do his job well and was sent to prison. Afterwards there were husbands and sons who were often in Qinglu province who knelt at the yamen's doors and beat the drum to complain about their grievances. Until now, it was discovered that the D daughter of the third household had become a concubine of the crown prince residence in the Qin country, thus implicating the matter of the third household's D daughter and the second household's Shu daughter in exchanging marriage. This made one sigh at how chaotic the inner courtyard of the Shen residence was, and at the same time made one wonder if the Shen family had offended any ghosts or gods that they would have such bad luck. It was really strange. It was in the afternoon and Shen Miao pulled the curtains back, intending to take a nap. The Shen family's matters had already progressed according to the steps that she had planned. Shen Miao could roughly guess what Emperor Wenhui would do. She just took off her cloak when she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned her head and saw that in the shadows, one did not know when Xie Jingxing had come over and was leaning on her couch. His hand was carelessly touching a furry thing, and that thing was arching up and down. Upon a closer look, it was the white tiger that Shen Miao had seen before. The tiger seemed to have grown a size bigger, and even its fur was glossy and smooth, making it look extremely beautiful. But Shen Miao did not have this in her eyes. She took a deep breath and said, "Who allowed you to go up my couch?" Xie Jingxing was really taking advantage of her nose. She was used to him coming in through the window at night, and now he dared to go up her couch in broad daylight. After a few more days, would he be able to swagger in from the main doors to drink tea, and the entire residence would line the streets to welcome him? Audacious to the point of being unreasonable. Xie Jingxing said, "Specially came to congratulate you. Why do you have such a reaction?" "Congratulate?" Shen Miao was startled. "What congratulation?" "The Shen family is in prison as you wish." Xie Jingxing released his hand, and that white tiger gave an sound and happily jumped around on Shen Miao's bed. It even used Shen Miao's good quality silk bedding to grind its claws, making one feel distressed. Xie Jingxing touched his chin. Chang Ziqing's reputation is ruined, Shen Wan regretted, Chen Roqiu was implicated, and Xinyu was also in prison. No matter how one looks at it, it is a matter worth congratulating. His eyes curved and there were sparkles as he said, "Are you not happy?" Shen Miao felt a little uncomfortable to be told so bluntly about the result of scheming against others. She took 2 steps forward and grabbed Xie Jingxing's sleeves, wanting to pull him up from her couch. As she was pulling, she said, "It is enough to congratulate verbally or prepare some money as a gift. Prince Rui need not personally make a trip." "How can that show this king's sincerity?" Shen Miao used a lot of strength, but Xie Jingxing did not move at all. He swept a glance at Shen Miao and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Moreover, in this round you also cheated Fu Xiu-yi, so it is even more worth celebrating." Shen Miao's heart jumped and her hands involuntarily loosened. Xie Jingxing suddenly raised his eyebrows and grabbed Shen Miao's hands and pulled her towards him. Shen Miao was caught off guard and was unsteady in front of her and fell straight forward onto Xie Jingxing's chest. The young man had a smile on his face, but his gaze was as sharp as a blade. His tone was clearly gentle like a lover's whisper, but every word he said was cold. He said in a low voice, "Huang Fu Hao was also dragged in, thus the old emperor would not easily let Fu Xiu-yi off. This move of yours is clever, but are you not afraid of attracting fire to yourself?" Shen Miao looked up at Xie Jingxing. 2 years ago, The youth was romantic and beautiful, but at the end he was somewhat frivolous. Perhaps he did it on purpose. 2 years later, he was truly exposed in front of everyone, but it made one feel that he was unfathomable. It was clearly a cynical tone, as if everything in the world was just a casual smile. But the ambition that was hidden under that handsome skin was the most frightening. Chapter 677. Asking a tiger for its skin. These words appeared in Shen Miao's heart. Yes, what Xie Jingxing said was right. Chen Roqiu's and Shen Wan's internal affairs were just a prelude, and Chang Ziqing only received the punishment that she deserved for being abandoned. And all of these were just a pretense, a smokescreen that she had set up for the last move. Shen Miao had never forgotten her real enemy, the most terrifying enemy, the most hated enemy, Fu Xiaoyi. Shen Wan already had a relationship with Prince Ding, Fu Xiaoyi, and now Shen Yu had become Huangfu Hao's person. Shen Yu was Shen Wan's daughter, so this made one think that perhaps Huangfu Hao and Fu Xiaoyi had some relationship? Being overly suspicious of Emperor Wenhui, he would definitely send people to investigate. If Huangfu Hao and Fu Xiaoyi really did not have any relationship, naturally one would not be able to find anything. Unfortunately, both of them had the intention to form an alliance. If Emperor Wenhui were to investigate seriously, it was highly possible that he would find some interesting things. At this critical juncture, it was a fatal blow to Fu Xiaoyi. His road to the emperor, with Emperor Wenhui's suspicions and hidden obstruction, would not be that smooth. She thought that this step was well hidden, but did not expect that the purple-clad youth in front of her could see through it in one glance, and see the crucial step that she had taken under the colorful outer shell. She wanted to get up from Xie Jingxing's body, but Xie Jingxing held her arm with one hand and the other hand supported the back of her head. Shen Miao was almost lying on Xie Jingxing's body. And when they breathed in, the distance was so ambiguous that she could hear the violent heartbeat, but did not know if it was hers or his. If there was someone coming in from the outside, Shen Miao would not want her innocence for the rest of her life. But Xie Jingxing was a frivolous person and did not feel that there was anything wrong with his actions. Shen Miao suddenly smiled and slowly opened her mouth. Invite fire to burn one's body? Xie Jingxing stared at her unruffled. The fire has already found me. Shen Miao's voice had an indescribable coldness and heaviness as she said, Does Prince Ri think that I still have a way out? She never had a way out. Even if there was no blood feud, no Wan Yu and Fu Ming, no rebirth for revenge, Shen Xion's merits would surpass the Lord, and there would be a day that the first household of the Shen family would face the end of destruction. In order to protect the Shen family, Fu Xiaoyi would become her enemy. Of course there's a way out, the young man suddenly said. Shen Miao's fingers that were holding onto his clothes moved slightly. His side profile was handsome beyond compare, and his dark eyes were so beautiful that they could almost drown in them. His long eyelashes were slightly warm under the sunlight that seeped in through the curtains. He said indifferently, With this king here, the fire won't burn you. If you're afraid, you can hide here. His voice was as mellow as wine as it floated into Shen Miao's ears. This king will cut open a path of retreat for you. Shen Miao looked at him. He spoke carelessly and did things in a frivolous manner, but it always gave one the illusion that his promises were heavy and could be done as he said. But why did she suddenly feel like crying? If in her previous life in the palace, someone had said to her, Come here, I will cut a path of retreat for you. Would she not walk down a dark path, and would she not end up in such a tragic state that her family would perish? The interaction between people was really strange. No matter if Xie Jingxing's words were true or false, Shen Miao's heart was gently tickled in front of her eyes. It was as if there were butterflies flying out of her heart. Xie Jingxing suddenly kept the smile on his lips and looked at Shen Miao seriously. He frowned slightly and whispered in Shen Miao's ear, But why is your heartbeat suddenly so loud? Chapter 678. Shen Miao fiercely pushed Xie Jingxing and sat up all of a sudden. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up and his hands were lazily placed behind his head as he said, Are you ill? It is you who are ill. Shen Miao took a deep breath and said, Prince Rue has congratulated enough. Now one can leave. I am also a pure young lady and would not be able to marry out if seen by others. Xie Jingxing frowned. Are you not going to be an empress? How would an ordinary person be able to marry you? Seeing that Shen Miao was about to get angry again, Xie Jingxing then sat up and grabbed the tiger that was chasing the pendant on the couch and threw it into his embrace. He glanced at Shen Miao and laughed. Since it is a happy event, how about I add flowers to the brocade? Shen Miao was surprised for a moment and subconsciously looked at Xie Jingxing to ask, what do you want to do? I do not see eye to eye with Fu Xiuyi. Xie Jingxing said lightly, even though one cannot solve it together. He winked at Shen Miao frivolously. It is not bad to throw stones when one is down. Just as Shen Miao expected, when the matter of Xin Yu being arrested and sent to prison reached Fu Xiuyi's ears, Fu Xiuyi, who would not change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed, could not help but turn pale. Why did Xin Yu suddenly enter the residence of Prince Qin? He asked his subordinate. One heard that second Xin young lady was not willing to marry to the young master of the Wang family and exchanged the marriage with the Shu-born third young lady of the Xin residence. It was just that at that time it was not convenient to publicize such a scandal. Afterwards, second Xin young lady secretly ran out of the residence and inadvertently got involved with the crown prince of Qin and became his concubine. Enough! Fu Xiuyi interrupted the attendant's words and pressed his forehead before saying hatefully, this group of people from the Shen family. Ever since he got involved with the Shen family, nothing went smoothly for him. One had to know that a few days ago when Shenwan came over to seek shelter from him, he gave Shenwan a difficult problem and did not expect that before it started, Shenwan would fall into it. So be it, but he was also implicated. Currently Emperor Wenhui was very suspicious of him and Fu Xiuyi managed to arrange everything with great difficulty and was prepared to push everything onto Shenwan, so that Emperor Wenhui would dispel his suspicions. Who knew that at this critical juncture, Huang Fu Hao would be dragged into this? On the surface it was Xin Yu's matter, but in fact it was related to the relationship between Ming Qi and the Qin country. Everyone was well aware that the Qin country and Ming Qi would most likely take the path of an alliance. Among the 9 princes, whoever was closer to Huang Fu Hao would be a thorn in Emperor Wenhui's eyes. Emperor Wenhui naturally did not wish for his son to be close to Huang Fu Hao. Emperor Wenhui hoped that in the eyes of the Qin country, he would be the only monarch. At such a sensitive time, Xin Yu was in the residence of the crown prince of Qin. What would Emperor Wenhui think? Would Xin Yu be a chess piece that Shenwan used to win over the crown prince of Qin and Shenwan was working for Fu Xiuyi? Fu Xiuyi and Huang Fu Hao were really tied together now. The more Fu Xiuyi thought about it, the more his head ached. Even if he had always planned in his chest, he did not know what to do with such a sudden situation today. After all, he did not know about the exchange of marriage between Xin Yu and Xin Dongling, and did not know that Huang Fu Hao had taken Xin Yu as a concubine. This matter came too coincidentally. A trace of ruthlessness appeared on Fu Xiuyi's cold face. There must be someone scheming behind the scenes. It is obvious that the spearhead is aimed at me. Shenwan's matter is fake and pushing me into the water is the real thing. I want to see who is the one playing tricks behind the scenes? A young advisor carefully asked, what does your highness intend to do next? Imperial father is suspicious and rashly clarifying would be self-defeating. Fu Xiuyi said, one can only wait and see the changes. But the first thing to be clear is who is scheming behind me. Perhaps it is Prince Zhou or Prince Xian. Impossible. Fu Xiuyi flatly denied. This is not in line with their usual style and methods. Moreover, it involves Huang Fu Hao, so when they make a move, it would be hard to avoid leaving traces. If it was discovered by Imperial Father, the gains would outweigh the losses. Chapter 679. The advisors looked at each other in dismay and no longer spoke. Pei Lang stood in the middle of the advisors. Fu Xiuyi did not have the intention to ask him, and he also did not take the initiative to speak. But he could feel Fu Xiuyi's gaze on him from above. Looking at Pei Lang's calm face, one did not know why, but another face suddenly appeared in front of Fu Xiuyi's eyes. That young female's face was delicate with a pair of eyes as clear as a mirror, just like a little beast that made one lovable. But she always frowned and put on airs, which made Fu Xiu-yi think of the head of the inner palace in Kuan-ning Palace. Perhaps compared to the head of the inner palace, she showed a more noble and dignified air. A phoenix? Or a ferocious beast? Fu Xiu-yi sneered. She was only a female. Even if she had great abilities, it was impossible for her to do all these things. But even so, Fu Xiu-yi did not forget that Shen Miao might have a close relationship with that Prince Rui from the Great Liang. Prince Rui from the Great Liang had a lukewarm attitude towards the entire imperial family of Ming-Chi and occasionally deliberately targeted him. Was it because of Shen Miao? If it was really because of Shen Miao, this Prince Rui made a move and Fu Xiu-yi had grasped the other's weakness. If one grasped the other's weakness, the next step would be to make a move mercilessly. This was also Fu Xiu-yi's style of doing things. He had to return the favor without hesitation so that he wouldn't waste the gift that the other party had given him. Fu Xiu-yi clenched his fists and slowly calmed down. He said, "Find a few people to guard the residence of Prince Rui and keep watch day and night." He slowly glanced at the advisors and lightly said, "We will also double the number of guards in our own mansion. Don't let a fly in and don't let a mosquito fly out." Pei Lang's heart jumped as he felt that Fu Xiu-yi's words seemed to be pointing at something. But his sleeves were still hanging down and his face was indifferent. On the other hand, when the advisors around him heard this, they all whispered to each other as if they had smelled some clues. Fu Xiu-yi's anger dissipated and a smile floated up as usual. It was just that his smile was only halfway when a guard came in from outside and said, "Your Highness, His Highness the Crown Prince had sent someone to pass a message to you." Fu Xiu-yi was startled and said, "Call him in." Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly realized something and his expression changed greatly. Bad. Emperor Wenhui knew about Xin Yu's matter and suspected that Fu Xiu-yi and Huang Fu Hao were involved. One feared that at this time, he would spare no effort to investigate the relationship between Fu Xiu-yi and Huang Fu Hao. Huang Fu Hao did not know what had happened, and did not know the real reason why Shen Wan had been arrested. He thought that he had come to ask, but unfortunately he had bumped into the muzzle of the gun. One feared that she had already been caught by Emperor Wenhui's people, thus she would not be able to wash herself clean even if she jumped into the Yellow River. At this moment, his crime was almost confirmed. Fu Xiu-yi suddenly sat down on the chair. In Ming-Chi's heavenly prison, there were currently quite a number of people locked up. Shen Yu and Shen Roqiu did not expect that they would reunite with Shen Wan's entire family under such circumstances. Shen Wan also did not expect that Shen Yu would actually become Huang Fu Hao's concubine. Shen Wan was after all a person who had gone through many trials and tribulations in court. Others could not see it clearly, but he understood it very clearly. Even though he knew that he would not be able to escape the death penalty this time, but Shen Yu had implicated Huang Fu Hao, which made him feel even more hopeless. Emperor Wenhui would not deal with Huang Fu Hao because Huang Fu Hao was the crown prince of the Qin country. Fu Xiu-yi could also think of ways to protect himself. Fu Xiu-yi had many capable people under him, and because of suspicions, he would punish a prince, unless Emperor Wenhui was not afraid of the world being in chaos. Saying it this way, the one that could be sacrificed was the Shen family. Shen Yu's heart was afraid and angry. When she entered the prison and was locked together with the Shen family's females, she anxiously pulled Shen Roqiu and asked, "Mother, why are we also arrested? Do we not have any relations with the Shen family? What exactly is going on?" When Song Zai-Ching saw it, her heart was somewhat refreshed. She originally regretted that she picked the Shen residence. Not only did she not gain riches, she also wanted to lose her life and future. So to speak, Shen Yu who left home and Shen Roqiu who was divorced were instead lucky. Originally Song Zai-Ching did not need to be involved in these matters, but the more she thought about it, the more unwilling she was. She did not think that Shen Yu and Shen Roqiu would be sent over, and Song Zai-Ching was extremely happy. When one was unlucky, one would always want to catch a few of the same people to go to hell together. Song Zai-Ching said, "How is second young lady not a person of the Shen residence? You are master's daughter." Shen Yu sneered, It is not your turn to interrupt. Chapter 680. That's not for a whore like you to interrupt. Song Zai-ching was surprised for a moment. She had long known that Xin Yu was not as refined as she looked on the surface, but did not expect that Xin Yu's mouth would be so powerful. She subconsciously looked toward Shen Wan, but what surprised her was that Shen Wan did not even look at her, as if he turned a deaf ear to Xin Yu's words. When Xin Yu saw Song Zai-ching's appearance, she said proudly, "Why? You still want my father to speak up for you? Now who in the entire capital does not know that you, Song Zai-ching, are used shoes that were slept with in the Lu province? It is said that prostitutes are heartless and actors are unrighteous. Seeing that you claim to be well-mannered and bite on words, why are you also as shameless? You are not even as good as the top courtesan in the brothel." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Song Zai-ching's heart jumped and subconsciously replied. She had always been locked up in prison and knew nothing about the outside world. She did not know that the matter of her in the Lu province had already spread out, and now the entire Ding capital was treating her as a joke. "You do not know?" Shen Yu was angry in her heart and simply used words to provoke her. "Your husband and son in the Lu province missed you so much that they specially came to the Ding capital to look for you." Shen Yu looked at Shen Wan maliciously. She was also quite resentful towards Shen Wan and continued to speak unhurriedly, that Tian Li had already knelt at the Yaman's residence's entrance and beat the drum to complain of injustice, saying that our Shen residents had forcefully snatched a commoner's wife. Song Zai-ching's body trembled and knew that she could no longer hide it but looked toward Xin Yu. Seeing that Shen Wan did not have much surprise on his face, she asked in a trembling voice, You already knew about it?" "What?" The one who spoke was old Shen Furen, who had been staring at the other side. She thought that Xin Yu and Song Zai-ching were not on good terms, so she said those humiliating words. Now she finally recovered and asked in a sharp voice, "You have married before? You still have a son?" Song Zai-ching did not answer, but Chen Ro-chio, who was watching coldly at the side, smiled. "Mother still do not know. The daughter-in-law that you have carefully picked for your son is now someone from other families. The Shen family raises daughter-in-law for other families, and this Song Zai-ching's son, after all, is not surnamed Shen. The things that are said about the Shen family outside are really wonderful. Mother should also listen to it." Shen Gui was also shocked by this sudden news. Chang Zai-ching finally recovered to her senses and looked at Chen Ro-chio before sneering. She no longer concealed her docile look and smashed the pot. "So what if I have married before? So what if she had a son? How could the Shen family be as clean as you said? It's just a pot calling the kettle black. What's more, I didn't even enjoy a few days of happiness after getting married, and now I have to suffer. It's hard to say who's the one who's going to suffer." When old Shen Furen heard it, anger rose in her heart. Being locked up in prison without rhyme or reason, she was half afraid and half irritated. She had no way to vent her anger, and Song Zai-ching had hit the tip of the spear. Without saying a word, she pounced on Song Zai-ching and scolded as she pulled Song Zai-ching's hair. "Slut! I'll let you cheat the Shen family. I'll let you cheat the Shen family. Shameless!" How would Chang Zai-ching be someone who would meekly submit to adversity? If one were to say that she had designs in the Shen residence so she could keep a low profile, now that her mask had been pierced, she could not care so much. She immediately started fighting with old Shen Furen. Even though old Shen Furen was old, when she fought, she still had the shrewdness of her youth as she had mingled in the streets before. Song Zai-ching was young and vigorous, but she had always prided herself as a scholar and did not fight with others, thus she was not able to gain any advantage. As both of them were fighting, they were cursing at each other and both were in a mess. When Shen Gui saw the situation, he wanted to pull them back, but males and females were separated in the prison, thus the spirit was willing but the strength was insufficient. It was even more impossible for Xin Yu and Chen Ro-chio, who were locked up together, to pull them back. Chen Ro-chio looked on coldly and Xin Yu even laughed out loud. All of this abnormally stopped when Song Zai-ching cried out in pain. Chapter 681. Old Shen Furen pushed Song Zai-ching away. Her face was full of nail scratches and her hair and clothes were in a mess, but she looked at the person on the ground in satisfaction. Song Zai-ching was curled up on the ground with her body bent over. She hugged her lower abdomen and her face was contorted in pain as she moaned loudly. Below her, a pool of blood gradually flowed out. She actually had a miscarriage in prison. One did not know where old Shinfuren had touched Song Zai-ching, but these days the food in the prison was not to one's liking and Song Zai-ching's body was weak. Most likely when she was fighting with old Shinfuren, she was injured in the abdomen. Shenge was at a loss as he looked at Shenwan, but saw that Shenwan's gaze did not change at all as he looked at Song Zai-ching painfully rolling on the ground, like he was looking at a stranger. As for old Shinfuren, she looked at Song Zai-ching almost crazily and scolded, "Slut! All of you deserve to die. Bitch." Shenyu was somewhat afraid of blood and seeing that there was more and more blood below Song Zai-ching that the ground was dyed red, she gradually started to be afraid and squeezed closer to Chen Rochio. Chen Rochio hugged Shenyu tightly and looked at Song Zai-ching as the corner of her lips slowly rose. Song Zai-ching's consciousness was somewhat fuzzy from the pain. She tried hard to call out to the jailer, hoping that someone would discover that her body was unwell and find a doctor for her. However, the prison guards came and went, occasionally casting disdainful and mocking glances at her. They had no intention of helping her at all. One did not know how long she had been moaning for, but Song Zai-ching gradually could not even make a sound. Most likely she was only breathing in and not out, as if she was about to pass away at any moment. No one spoke in the cell. It was eerily quiet. Everyone of the Shen family looked at Song Zai-ching with disgust, impatience, ridicule, fear and disdain, but there was no sympathy at all. Disasters would distort human nature, and when one's status was on the opposite side, there would be no sympathy. From Shinyu and Chen Rochio's point of view, Song Zai-ching reaped what she sowed, and from Shenwan's point of view, Song Zai-ching deceived him and her death was not to be pitied. Shenge was not a good person and old Shinfuren could not wait to tear Song Zai-ching into pieces. In Song Zai-ching's life, the first half of her life was most likely very smooth sailing, and even though the second half was not smooth sailing, she thought that with her own intellect, not to mention flying up the branches to become a phoenix, it was still possible to obtain riches and honor. She could fight and snatch for riches and honor, disregarding her conscience and face. But who knew that the riches and honor pit she plunged headfirst into was a burial ground, and the people she tolerated and dealt with were even scarier than jackals and wolves. At this time, Song Zai-ching suddenly remembered the Lu province, the incompetent husband who loved to drink and the son who always silently chopped firewood to feed the chickens. She muttered in a daze, "Why Shing?" Shinyu frowned, "What is she talking about?" Chen Rochio shook her head. "Mother, why do you look so lethargic?" Shenyu held her hand tightly. "Is this matter very serious? When can we get out?" "Don't worry, this is just a small matter. His Majesty will let us out once he finds out. Don't worry. You should rest for a while so that you won't have the strength later." Chen Rochio smiled as she answered. With Chen Rochio's assurance, Shenyu's heart was slightly at ease and indeed felt somewhat tired, so she leaned on Chen Rochio and closed her eyes. When old Shinfuren heard Chen Rochio's words, she gradually calmed down. Even though she was not very satisfied with Chen Rochio, one would always know who was better after comparison. With Song Zai-ching as a foil, old Shinfuren felt that Chen Rochio was still not bad. She also closed her eyes to rest. No one cared if Song Zai-ching was dead or alive. Chapter 682. Chen Rochio glanced at Song Zai-ching and sneered before thinking of something, and her gaze became desperate. She lied to Shinyu about whether there was a way out this time. They might not be able to make it out alive. No one understood Shenwan's eyes better than Chen Rochio. If there was a glimmer of hope, Shenwan would not have such a reaction. He sat there coldly and somewhat woodenly, as if he did not care about anything, no matter if it was the Shen family becoming the joke of the Ding capital, or the scuffle between old Shinfuren and Song Zai-ching, or Song Zai-ching's miscarriage. Shenwan was expressionless. Shenwan was in despair. Even Shen Wan was in despair, so there was no reason for Chen Roqiu to have any other way to survive. It was just that when she really knew this ending, Chen Ruoqiu was not as unacceptable as she thought. Perhaps it was because Chen Roqiu had seen the fickleness of human nature when the Chen family and the Shen family were in a lawsuit, or perhaps the matter of being divorced by Shen Wan had left Chen Roqiu scarred. At the moment, Chen Roqiu was physically and mentally exhausted, and Chang Ziqing had ended up in such a state, so she did not care much. Since they were going to die, wasn't it better to die together? Even if they died, they would still be a family. Chen Roqiu thought. Third younger brother. In the silence, someone was the first to break the silence. It was Xin Gui. He asked, "Don't you feel that our Shen family seems to have encountered some evil in recent years? When father was around, there weren't so many things." Ever since Xin Gui was found to have damaged the root of his offspring, he had been muddle-headed every day. It was rare for him to be clear-headed for once. Whether it was true or not, he had asked a serious question. Shen Wan glanced at him, and one could not distinguish between joy and anger in his tone. Is it when father is around or when Shen Exin is around? Xin Gui was at a loss for words. Indeed, it was not accurate to say that old General Shen was around. To be accurate, when the Shen residence went downhill, it started when the first household separated from the family. In fact, 2 years ago when Shen Exin had just returned to the capital, their careers were not smooth. It was just that at that time the Shen family had not separated yet, and their colleagues in the official circles had to give face to Shen Exin and flatter them. After Shen Exin left the capital, those people did not have any misgivings, and the Shen family deteriorated day by day. Even though one did not want to admit it, it was indeed a fact. Without Shen Exin, the Shen family was the same as those random official families in the Ding capital. There was nothing special about it. However, Shen Wan's words didn't mean what he said on the surface. Xin Gui asked hesitantly, "You are saying that someone is scheming against our Shen family? You were also schemed against this time?" Shen Wan smiled strangely, but no one knew what he was smiling about. Could it be that Shen Exin caused trouble behind the scenes? Xin Gui suddenly understood. Chen Roqiu, who was sitting quietly at the side, opened her mouth at this time. "That little slut that Luo Shuiyan gave birth to is very evil. Did you all not discover that as long as one is related to Shen Miao, one would not end up well?" Shen Wan and Xin Gui looked at Chen Roqiu at the same time. Chen Roqiu did not seem to see their gazes and continued. "First it was the second household's Shen Qing and Shen Yuan, and now it is the third household's turn. Initially second Saw did not gain any advantage in her hands. Come to think of it, if one were to say that the Shen residence had frequent mishaps, it would be better to say that it was the beginning of her great change in temperament. One was very strange as one's thoughts were constantly changing. In the past, in Shen Wan and Xin Gui's eyes, Shen Miao at most had a little cleverness, but how would she have such great ability? But now that she had fallen to such a state, and hearing Chen Roqiu's words, it was actually so. Just take Princess Ming-En as an example. Did she not also inexplicably die after forming enmity with Shen Miao? Until now there was no investigation of the reason. Chapter 683. Chen Wan said in a deep voice, "Just based on her alone she would not be able to do this, unless there is an expert guiding her from behind, or she found a backer." One fear that it is not that Shen Miao found a backer. Shen Gui pondered, "It is the Shen family that found a backer." He seemed to have thought of something and slapped his knee. Why didn't Shen Exin fall to his death on the battlefield? I was just saying, why was everything going wrong for so many years? So it was because Shen Exin was causing trouble behind the scenes. He said it righteously but did not mention how many times the Shen family had caused trouble for Shen Exin. No matter what, this matter is more or less related to Shen Exin. At this time, Chen Roqiu calmed down, and the words that she said were more pertinent and useful. Otherwise it would not be that when something happened, the entire Shen residence was implicated, but only the first household was safe and sound. Everyone fell silent. After a long while, Shen Gui fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "Since that's the case, then we have to drag them down with us this time. Even if we are unable to obtain any benefits, Their first household should not think of having an easy time. He looked at Shen Wan. Third younger brother, let's think of ways to get Shen Xen involved. No. Shen Wan calmly said, the matter has already reached the point of conviction. To implicate Shen Xen at this time, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to see that this is framing. The more it is like this, the more His Majesty will feel that the first branch and us are not the same kind of people, that we are treacherous officials, and the first branch is loyal. The first branch took advantage of it for nothing. Shen Gui said angrily, then are we just going to let him off like this? Shen Wan sneered, after suffering such a big loss, moreover father was biased toward Shen Xen, and after fighting for so many years, I do not believe that we will still lose. Even if we cannot pull Shen Xen down, we will at least peel off a layer of Shen Xen's skin. Third brother, you mean? Shen Gui was puzzled. Shen Wan lowered his voice. If His Majesty can't get through, there will always be someone else. Take a guess, now that this has happened, of course we are the ones suffering, but who is more angry than we are? Chen Ruoqiu frowned. Prince Ding? Not bad. Shen Wan looked at Chen Ruoqiu calmly. At this time, it was useless to blame Chen Ruoqiu for submitting the evidence in a fit of anger. Moreover, the reason was that Shen Wan divorced Chen Ruoqiu because of Zhang Ziqing. In the long run, perhaps someone had set up a trap and schemed all of them, so what was the point of blaming anyone? However, all of them were disheartened and exhausted. However, even before death, a poisonous snake would never forget to take a bite out of its victim. The Shen family was such a poisonous snake. Shen Wan said coldly, our every move is being monitored by others. There is no doubt that there are Prince Ding's people among them, and to talk more about the first household of the Shen family would make Prince Ding suspicious. Previously, when Prince Ding wanted him to matchmake Shen Miao and Prince Zhou, he already had some doubts about Shen Miao. Now that the eldest household of the Shen family was mentioned, once Prince Ding thought that it was the eldest household of the Shen family who cheated him and made him suspected by Emperor Wenhui, one fear that he would immediately want to destroy the eldest household of the Shen family. What kind of person was Prince Ding? He was the one who hid the deepest among the 9 princes and was more like a smiling tiger compared to Prince Xian. Being stared at by Prince Ding, Shen Wan believed that the eldest household of the Shen family would have a hard time in the future. Even if one could not change the outcome, one must still bury a malignant tumor for the eldest household of the Shen family. There would be a day when it would sprout. He muttered softly and said in a voice that only he could hear, I will wait for you on the road to the netherworld, eldest brother. The case regarding Shen Wan in the Ding capital was closed very quickly, so much that when the commoners knew of the news, they were somewhat baffled. Chapter 684. The former formidable great general's Shen residence was searched, the servants were exiled and the masters were all beheaded. There had not been such a big case in Mingqi for a long time, and this case did not seem to be that serious. The officials seemed to be deliberately keeping it a secret, and the crime was only not doing a good job and causing a big disaster. It was just that no one knew what that big disaster was. Being an official was like this. If the monarch wanted the official to die, the official had to die. If Emperor Wenhui wanted to execute any official, sometimes he would not even bother to think of a reason. Especially for people like the Shen family, the only officials were Shen Wan and Shen Ge, and these two people were gradually declining in their official careers, so there was no one to speak up for them. Of course, there seemed to be an invisible hand pushing it. In short, everything happened so fast that one did not expect it. On the day of the execution, Shen Miao wanted to go and see. Luo Tan looked at Shen Miao strangely and asked, what is Biao's youngest sister going to see? That kind of bloody scene, the head would roll down and one would have nightmares at night. It is better not to go. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan would not go to see as they still had military affairs. Of course, even if there were no military affairs, they would also not go. Towards the Shen family, Luo Shuiyan did not have any feelings, but Shen Xian most likely had some, but those complicated feelings were all wiped out by the things that the Shen family did all these years. It was better to not meet and would not take the initiative to find trouble for oneself. Shen Miao said, I want to go and see. I have not seen a beheading before. Luo Tan, she said in a flustered and exasperated manner, what is there to see about a beheading? But in her heart she was secretly anxious for Shen Miao. Females were always soft-hearted, and even though the entire Shen family was not a good person, Shen Miao had been with them for such a long time, and it was inevitable that there would be some sorrow. If she were to go up now, she would only be finding trouble for herself. I will accompany younger sister, Shen Qiu said. Shen Qiu knew Shen Miao's stubborn character, and if he did not let her go, Shen Miao would sneak out herself to save trouble. He was not afraid, and with the guards by his side, they would be able to protect Shen Miao. I will also go along, Luo Ling said with a smile. I have not seen a beheading before. What are you talking about, cousin? Luo Tan glanced at Luo Ling. Previously in the northwestern region, it is not like one had not seen people being executed by military orders. One could not even bear to look at the beheading. What first time? Luo Ling's smile was somewhat stiff, as he did not expect that his own Tang younger sister would tear him down like this. When Shen Qiu heard it, he looked meaningfully at Luo Ling until Luo Ling felt uneasy before saying, then let's go together. When Luo Tan saw that everyone had left, she gritted her teeth and stomped her feet before saying, then I will also follow. I don't want to stay in the residence alone. Biao youngest sister, you must cover my eyes properly later. When the group of people arrived at the execution ground, the onlookers outside had already surrounded the execution platform in 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Because Shen Qiu and his entourage were accompanied by guards, the commoners took the initiative to clear the way. The surrounding people recognized Shen Qiu and whispered as they pointed at Shen Qiu and Shen Miao. One had long known that the first household of the Shen family and the second and third household were not on good terms, but one did not expect that when the second and third household were executed, the siblings of the first household would come to watch the execution. Some people said that the first household had gained a blessing in disguise. That year, when they were forced by the second and third household to remove their names, they managed to escape this calamity. Some people also said that the siblings of Shen Xian were too cold-blooded, that they actually watched their family members being executed without being moved. On the execution platform, Shen Wan and his entourage were all kneeling with shackles on, wearing dirty prisoner's uniform and unkempt hair and dirty faces. There was no trace of the previous rich and powerful appearance. And Xin Yu and old Shenfuren's mouths were still stuffed with rags, and it seemed that one could see Xin Yu desperately shaking her head with fear in her eyes. Xin Yu and old Shenfuren had always been very afraid of death. Most likely they were unable to accept this fact up till now and were still thinking that there was still room for redemption. Chapter 685. Shen Miao's lips slightly hooked up. Her eyes swept across the people on the stage one by one. Shen Wan, Chen Rouqiu, Shen Ge, Shen Yu, old Shenfern. Hearing that Chang Zaiqing had a miscarriage in prison, when the jailer found her the next day and carried her out, her body was already stiff. It was better to let him bleed to death while he was still alive. At least he wouldn't have to watch helplessly as his head was chopped off and his corpse was left intact. But what was the use of that? Her life was gone, and the entire Ding capital knew that she abandoned her husband and son. Biao youngest sister, what are you thinking about? Luo Tan asked softly. Thinking about the past. Shen Miao gently answered. She thought of when she was fighting for power with Mei Furen in the inner palace. It was this group of people on the stage who stabbed the first household without leaving any leeway. They caused the death of Xin Qiu, caused the death of Luo Shuiyan, caused Shen Xian to be haggard, and caused Wan Yu and Fu Ming to not have a strong support from their mother's family, and could only be sacrificed in the imperial family's throne room. They obviously had the most orthodox blood but lived like a lowly Shu son or Shu daughter. And all of these were given by these people in front of her. Xin Yu said, "Fifth younger sister, we are not a family. Not a family, but an enemy. At least from now on, with the death of this group of people on the stage, she and those jackals, wolves, tigers and leopards of the Shen family no longer had any relationship at all." Shen Yu looked around in a panic on the stage but suddenly looked towards Shen Miao's direction. At the same time, when she saw Shen Miao, a strong hatred burst out from her eyes. If it was not for the fact that she was being held in shackles, Shin Yu would have crossed the crowd to Shin Miao and scratched Shin Miao's face. Shin Miao smiled at her through the crowd and did not care if Shin Yu could see clearly, but she slightly raised her chin and looked at her with a critical and condescending gaze, like looking at a dog. Shin Yu was angered by Shin Miao's gaze and started to scream even more. The official who was holding her impatiently gave her a kick, and Shin Yu seemed to be in pain from the kick and was momentarily quiet. But she looked towards another direction with an extremely angry expression. Shin Miao followed her gaze and saw that not far from her, there was a familiar figure. It was a young lady, dressed in luxurious clothes, slightly drooping eyebrows, pointed chin and big eyes. If it wasn't Shin Dongling, who else could it be? Shin Dongling also saw Shin Miao and smiled gently and actually walked towards Shin Miao. When he was near, he bowed to Shin Miao and softly said, "Fifth younger sister." Then he looked at Shin Qiu and said, "Eldest brother." Shin Qiu nodded indifferently. Shin Miao however carefully sized up Shin Dongling. Shin Dongling was originally good-looking and had the same looks as Wan Yinyang, 3 points of delicateness and a few points of coquettishness. With such looks, there were actually very few that could be the main room. Most of them were concubines who had such appearances. When marrying a wife, one must choose a virtuous one, but when marrying a concubine, one must choose a charming one. In the past, Shin Dongling was always submissive in the Shin residence and was always patient and obedient. Her good looks were also wasted by that gray and loose clothes. Looking at it now, perhaps it was because she had taken good care of herself, her face was so tender that water could be squeezed out of it. Her gaze was also moist and moving. She wore bright clothes that accentuated her slender figure. She was a vivid and charming beauty. Looking at the entourage beside her, it seemed that Wang Bai treated her well. Otherwise he would not let a married female like her show her face in public so casually. Because Shin Dongling rarely left the courtyard in the Shin residence, not to mention going out, thus the surrounding commoners did not recognize her. Luo Tan looked at Shin Dongling with some curiosity. Shin Dongling looked at Shin Miao and said with a smile, "One did not think that one would be able to meet fifth younger sister here. It is really fate." Shin Miao smiled gently. Shin Dongling's attitude was very natural and there was no trace of sorrow in her expression. One heard that Wan Yinyang was also fetched out and was sold off by the Wang family. But Shin Gei, who was on the stage, was Shin Dongling's father, and Shin Dongling did not have any trace of change in expression. When she was chatting with Shin Miao, it was as if she was watching a flower viewing banquet. Upon closer inspection, there was even some joy. "I am here to seek pleasure." Shin Miao looked at Shin Dongling. "What is third older sister here for?" When Shin Dongling heard it, she covered her mouth and smiled unhurriedly. It was completely different from the past. Now her every move was overflowing with charm, like the young Wan Yinyang, and there was no trace of timidity in the past. She said, "Fifth younger sister seeking pleasure, I dare not." Shen Dongling looked at the stage, only heard about the interesting matter in the Ding capital and came to have some fun and to be happy. Just as she finished speaking, one heard the executioner on the stage throwing down a sign and said, "The time has arrived. Execution." A few streaks of blood spurted out at the same time. Shen Dongling used a handkerchief to cover her mouth and widened her eyes with a look of pity as she softly said, "Really pitiful." Shin Miao said calmly, "Really pitiful." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.